What is happening, everybody? Back again, another episode, the Off Track Experience. Pretty excited to bring you guys this one. This one's been one that's been in the pipeline for a while now, but we finally got Jase McAlpine from Gypsy Tales to come sit down. We met back in 2019 when I jumped on his podcast and opened up about a lot of stories and kind of where I was at in life. And honestly, at the time, was probably one of the happiest points in my life. And being able to share the stories I did and then the reaction I got back was something that was pretty powerful. And I've kind of ever since then have put it out there that once I get up here, or like you can come jump on my podcast and we'll kind of tell your story a little bit better. So finally got him to sit down for 3.5 hours, which is the longest one of these we've actually done. But it kind of shows you that, yeah, when we sit down, we can kind of go in depth and everything. And he's definitely someone that I feel like I could talk to anything about in depth and that would understand it on a level equal to mine. So, and I think the reaction we get from when we do these kind of things is so positive that it's just like, yeah, why not share these stories and hopefully motivate people or inspire people to kind of see more in themselves or see the world in a better light. So I really hope you guys enjoy this podcast. And yeah, here's Jase McAlpine. Cheers, guys.
They know to keep the microphone.
Yeah, it's just like simple stuff like where you put your mic and like you sit down and they just get comfortable straight away. And then other people are like, fuck, what are we going to talk about? Do you ever find that like funny how like you'll chat with someone for ages and then you'll be like, should do a podcast? And they're like, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
And you're just like, what
we just did this for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I did one probably a week ago with this girl and she was literally like, she wanted to do it. And then when she like kind of like sat down, she's like, kind of like it's that nervous.
It's pretty unusual for people to do it like just the everyday person, you know. I think that's one thing that me and you have going for us in a sense is like we're not trying to interview random people. It's like athletes have a fair bit of like exposure to doing interviews and stuff like that. So it sort of just doesn't seem as weird. And even for me, I think I was just around so many people doing it from like behind the camera that I kind of just like knew
got comfortable with it,
what to do.
Do you ever get nervous when you do it now? Is there anyone that makes you nervous?
Not really. Mick Doohan does, to be honest, but like
why Mick Doohan?
Dude, but he just does in day-to-day life. Like I feel like that's probably one superpower that I have that lets me do Gypsy Tales good is that I don't ever get starstruck, literally ever. But
you told me you kind of got for one guy, and I reckon you know the guy I'm thinking of that you got. You told me you were a bit nervous.
Maybe, yeah. Well, yeah.
Who do you think did?
Well,
nah, someone else.
I don't know. Maybe Abbo?
No, it wasn't Abbo.
Who was it?
Sam Hill.
Oh, I was actually a bit nervous for that one. Yeah.
I feel like there's hype around that as well because like he's
never done
them. So it was not just like I'm doing a podcast with someone. It's like I'm doing a podcast with someone who openly doesn't do podcasts.
Well, they're my favorite to do, to be honest. But yeah, that one definitely felt like it came with extra weight. Like I literally bought Troy Lee Designs red and black pants with like the big Troy Lee down there that Sam Hill wore on Mad Cat's Iron Horse. Like that's how long I've lauded that dude for, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, when you get to do a podcast with a guy that you've had like that kind of relationship with, it's probably like one of the first dudes I ever really was like, fuck, he's the man. Like even before motocross guys, you know?
Yeah, put him on a bit, because your whole background was mountain biking as well. So you put him on a pedestal before you even kind of got into the moto thing.
And then like just knowing him, Sam's like one of the best people in the world to like hang out with in his house as like he's a dad to his kids, like just being around him in that sense. But he's just a guy that doesn't like very few words, but everything he says has like a bit of pop to it.
Yeah.
So that's just hard for I guess a podcast because you feel like you've got to, for him to do his best work, I've got to do like a lot of talking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and then that's the thing I always get worried about. It's like, I just don't want to talk more than the guest. But some guys, they literally work better like that. They're like counter strikers in a conversation, you know?
Because that's tricky, hey, because it's like you want to let the guest speak, but you know, I've got to say this amount of words to pull this amount back out of you. And that's just kind of like the dance partner you can get sometimes.
Yeah. And then I think the thing as well is that the more like vulnerable you get as a host telling stories or like giving your own experience, that's when people say like, oh, he just talks about himself. I'm like, no, I'm trying to make this person feel comfortable saying this level of detail about themselves or like going this deep about a topic. Like I'm trying to like give them permission to go to that place. Like no one's going to open up to a person that just sits there and wants information from you. You know what I mean? It's not like an exchange. And I mean, that's like meta level fucking conversational thinking that people who listen to a podcast aren't going to kind of take into consideration. But yeah, that's like the thing that I think about the most.
Well, you're trying to make a friend in 3 hours. Well, a friend. You're trying to make a friend and also then pull out a story that you want to hear that then can also be received by everyone in a good way.
Yeah, well, and think about if you just went to I always say this to people as well, like when have you ever when have you ever done this or seen someone do this where like you go to a dinner party or a barbecue or something and someone just talks literally about themselves for 3 hours. So imagine like a person voluntarily doing that. You'd be like, that guy is super weird. Or imagine how uncomfortable you'd feel if someone interrogated you and made you talk about yourself for like that amount of time. Yeah. So like that's the reality of like that's one extreme of the spectrum and the other extreme of the spectrum in terms of like me sitting down doing a 3-hour interview with someone. So imagine the dance you've got to do to try and like find that sweet spot in the middle between those two ends, because the dude at either end of that spectrum is like a bit of a dickhead, you know?
And I feel like you're going to bounce between kind of that middle ground a little bit slightly through that whole process as well.
Yeah. And it depends on like who the person is. Like Sleet is a real good example, right? Like it's rude to cut people off in conversations. But me and him like literally just cut each other off because we're like almost building on each other's sentences and we're building on the topic and we're like, nah, but what about this? And it's such like, it's that's almost like idea building in a sense, you know?
And that's how you deal with your friends as well. Like that's a close friend. It's like, it's not that just interview, question, answer kind of structure.
Yeah. Yeah. But so people don't like if you, especially on like the clips channel, like the shorter videos, full clickbait, like we're just trying to suck people in and you've got zero context that me and him are really good friends and we ride all the time and we've known each other 15 years. Like, so you could just you've got no context. So you could make up any kind of thing. So it sort of just like doesn't worry me anymore.
But that's kind of a good thing because obviously if you put up something and no one's got the context of how well you know each other, they could be like, oh, look at this like heated like debate or something. Or be like, oh shit, man, Gypsy's getting pretty harsh with the guest or whatever. But you're like, if you've got no context and it's like a new listener, like again, it just builds that brand more anyway.
Yeah. And I think that it's just, I just look at it as like good content. Is it good content? Like, could you just objectively click on that video after looking at the title and thumbnail, feel like your curiosity was like somewhat squashed or you had felt some type of way about like the way that the content was presented to you? Like that to me is just good content that is engaging with you. It's like making you think and feel about it. And then you just go away, you either watch another one or
do you create any of that now, or is that all Rones and Alex that do all that, or do you like
they pretty much do all that content now.
All the content? Yeah. Do you like obviously you oversee it, but are you just like, yeah, this is good or that's bad, or do you kind of let them just run with it and put it out and then you kind of look at it and go like good or bad kind of thing, or more of this or more of that?
Oh, probably lately, just with going away and stuff last month. Like I've had 2 times this year where I've lived away. So the first one was in Feb when I went to Bali, and then this Dubai trip. And in those times, that's where I'm like super hands off. Like I'm like, all right, you boys like really need to just steer the ship. It's not like I'm not working. I'm just kind of like focused on something else.
How's that feel?
It's pretty scary, to be honest. Like, especially because, well, dude, like, so good example, even Dino, we got so much good stuff out of his podcast and the views.
This is Wilson,
yeah. But yeah, even he was like, fuck, the clickbait's like kind of gnarly. So it's like, that's because I've just said like, get as many views. Like,
but that's what you're going to want to click on. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it did awesome. We had like a really legit month last month. So yeah, I mean, it does get a little bit like, so the last few nights, because pretty much how it sort of worked was at the start, it was like me making the content all myself. And then Rones came along. And then it was like me and Rones. It never really was like fully Rones doing the podcast content because then Alex started working with us. And then so there's kind of like, I guess, our version of being a janitor is making like Instagram reels, basically, you know.
Because you even back then, you were chopping back and forth between cameras as you were interviewing, which I tried to do that. It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like to focus on like, okay, you're speaking now, back to camera you, or camera 1 or 2, and then back. I try to do that with my brother, and it wasn't even a serious podcast. I would forget. I'd get stuck in my thoughts. I'd be like, oh, the camera's on me. He's talking. Yeah. Like, I don't know how you did that. I didn't even realize you were doing that.
Yeah, I didn't do that for too long though. I kind of went back to the edit. I figured out just a fast way to get it done.
To chop
like
it back and forth.
In the editing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I'd say the first 3 years was just so gnarly of like, I was actually thinking about this today before I came here, is that I kind of feel like I've just got to a point now with the podcast where like I've done so much work that I just feel like good about it to where it's kind of like a random topic, I guess. But yeah, there was just a point for, I'd say like those first, probably up until like really recently, but those first 3 years was just like me doing all the content completely by myself. Every thumbnail, every Instagram post, the whole deal. And it was getting pretty shitty. Like there's sort of only so much you can listen to your own voice, like judge the things that you say. Like it was
like
pretty.
It's like how you view yourself as well is going to be. It's such a hard thing because you might say something really positive and uplifting and good, but you might view yourself and like, oh, no one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But like Rones could see it and be like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Throw some clickbait on it, throw it up there, thousands of views. It's like you can get stuck in your own head looking at your thing. Yeah.
Well, that was like a massive part of it is wanting to post stuff that you think is good content and is like good for people. But then, yeah, just not wanting to come across as self-righteous or self-promoting and that's why there's very little of that kind of content. Like even on the social stuff, it's mostly just the guests talking.
The funny thing is it's like if you posted it or Rones posted it, that doesn't matter because people don't know who posted it.
Know, yeah.
But the thing, like I got a young kid to start posting some stuff for me. And when he'd post something of me speaking, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But like if I posted it myself, I'd be like, even though like the end result's the same. No one knows if I posted or someone else posted it. So why does it matter where it come from? It's a weird loop.
Well, I mean, but I'm sort of grateful for it because like I kind of got to a point where I was literally just like staring at my own ego for like 3 years and it was just the weirdest fucking deal. And, but that ended up leading me into so much of like the meditation stuff, so much of like literally my personal philosophy around like the way I live my life now. And I feel like I'm a way happier and more balanced person because of it. And it's literally because I stared at my fucking own ego for 3 years. It was like, what the fuck is
what
that?
Is this?
And so it was like, it was awesome in the end. But yeah, so then like Rones kind of came along. Well, I guess I should go back. Like the fear I always had was that like it still felt like it could kind of go away at any moment. You know what I mean?
Like you'd lose the podcast, you mean?
Yeah, and that it would like I'd lose interest in it. People would lose interest in it. The views would stop coming in and then I'd kind of just be left like scrambling like what to do because I'd put so much like from pretty much the day I started, I was like, I'm just going to do this full time and just we'll see how it goes.
But there was no plan B.
No, like literally no, like no plan B at all. And that was the thing. So yeah, it was like for those few years, I was like in that cycle of just grinding because you could probably feel this as an athlete. You can get to a point where you feel like you've done so much work, you've reached like a tipping point. And it's probably in your case, it'd be like, all right, I've done this mountain bike deal for so long. Like I'm a professional mountain bike rider now. Like next year I'll be a professional mountain bike rider and the year after that. I might not know exactly what sponsors I've got or whatever, but like you see yourself as this thing now cannot be taken away from me. And yeah, I think that's what I was like kind of trying to get towards for a while is like, how does this, and sustainable in the sense of like, it's not me doing the camera every time. It's because that's something that could like take it away from you in a sense. Like you could take it away from yourself.
Do you feel like you don't have that now? Like you feel like I'm a pod. Like
now
that's gone. What was it?
It's very recent.
What was the tipping point for that?
Probably what you were kind of asking about. Are you doing all your content?
When you've just let it, when it's self-managing kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's now, I guess, yeah. So like Rones came on, then it was me and him, but we weren't doing too much of like the vlog content and the trips and the trail. Like we were just trying to get the podcast out. And then that was the thinking by getting Griff on board was like, all right, one person does the podcast stuff. Rones does the trips and the vlogs and all the extra kind of thing. And then try and build those up together. And then to get, those two things running to where it's like, I'm not just sitting at the keyboard and mouse every day.
Because I remember when I came and saw you, I was like, because obviously you were just trying to smash podcasts out, but I just like, you've got to obviously go on those trips and have those experiences to then come back and relate. It's like going out on those trips is actually really beneficial for your business because you're going to have so many more life experiences to then share with the next guest. And like, obviously you do podcast, you can get stuff from that, but I just thought, you're kind of trapping yourself
for sure,
in this box, which obviously you've got to do it to grind to a certain extent. But then it's like, at what point does that start being detrimental to the actual business of like, okay, now I'm just talking about the same thing I've talked about because I didn't go to America and I didn't do this crazy shit with fun people that then you can share. Like whenever you go on a trip and do the vlog thing, I remember I'd get pumped for that because it's like, I feel like your position, like you can create so much content with so many cool people because you've like immersed yourself in that world so heavily that it's like, you kind of just can, I don't know, I feel like you bounce around everywhere, which is kind of cool. Like I feel like there's very few people that can go to just like like kind of pretty much most extreme, like mountain biking, moto, wakeboarding, whatever. And you can bounce around everyone and everything so easily. Like, do you find like that's obviously come from, I don't know, just being a good person and like keeping those solid relationships everywhere? Like you can just go to these events and just like,
I
don't know, create cool content because like you say, you're friends with all the top motor guys, friends of Mount. Like I feel like you just, I don't know, gravitate towards these like cool, good, fun people in a way.
Yeah, I've always just like probably looked up to those people in terms of I've always been interested in motocross, mountain bikes, surfing. Like I do all those sports and I just got a lot of respect for people that can make a living out of it, you know, and I think that, I mean, there's a lot of dickheads that I wouldn't hang out with, but there's so many people where it's like, I only need to know a few things about you if you're a guy that rides a mountain bike for a living and, you know, does downhill, or if you're a pro cyclist or if you're a pro surfer, like I only need to know, get a couple good vibe checks off a person and know a few things. And then I can pretty much trust that that's a solid human just because you've had to go through crazy injuries. You've had to make it in a sport that, you know, doesn't pay a ton of money and there's so many sacrifices that you've got to make, and you obviously treat your body and mind in a, you know, in a good way. So I feel like it's just easy to kind of gravitate towards those kind of people, if that makes sense. So it's almost like a qualification process that's already been done for you.
I guess you can relate so much to that because even though you weren't like the athletes, like the podcast was just your sport and you still traveled, and especially doing the like motocross stuff in America. Like my housemate's about to go over and film for Honda.
Oh,
and I was like,
that's right. Yeah, he's killing it.
So he's been doing the Ken Rocks and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's about to go to America and go literally kind of do what you did, just like hang out with the moto guys and shoot content. And it's just funny because it's just like you're literally about to like copy what my life is, but obviously with downhill racing.
Yeah,
it's just like, it's hectic, man. I was like, no shit, like it is fun and it is a cool job, but man, you are like he got back from France and then went and shot Adelaide, and then he's coming back. He's just like constantly flying now, working massive days. Like his brain's always on. I was like, yeah, it's a cool life, but it's also a hard one at the same time. And I guess that's what you experienced that. So like you can relate to, I guess, the athletes a lot in that sense.
Yeah. And I think that I was just young when I was over there, and a lot of the guys were young too. And I knew when to when to do the work and then when to just be like, all right, we're done. You know, like now we can all just chill.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you're doing the same schedule. You're in the same airport. Like you kind of, if you're following a series or you're following those guys around, like you're all kind of in the shit together.
Yeah.
And it's like one big traveling circus, and everyone's kind of like, playing their role. So yeah, maybe that is.
It's a weird kind of like ecosystem, like a motocross, like obviously downhill's the same, but it's like you got these fierce competitors, which you're kind of friends with, and then you're also racing against, and like, it's this weird like tension that builds on a weekend where everyone's like just a bit more quiet, a bit anxious, and then it's like the race is over, and then everyone just like relaxes, like it's like this big relief kind of comes over everyone, and everyone's happy and like hanging out again, and then you go to the next race and it's like a tension again, and it's this like weird build up and release that like constantly happens, and you're kind of just in the middle of that, just like, because I guess you wouldn't have that, you would see it, but you probably wouldn't feel it as much because you're not competing, I guess, in that sense.
Nah.
Or do you still feel nervous for just like shooting like a race, or like?
I used to get nervous for filming like I would get nervous for sport. Really, like when I was filming races and stuff, especially, you know, you're on like tight lenses and shit, and you're trying to like nail focus points and stuff. Like you only get one, like you fuck up the dude getting the whole shot, like you fucked up the dude get you. There's no, it's not like you got 10 pitches to, you know, save yourself.
Yeah.
But so I used to fully get nervous, and it's funny, I've fully grown out of this now, but I'd go on a film trip and I'd hate the whole thing. Like I'd hate the whole time. Just
for being stressed.
Yeah, just from being fucking anxious. Like, and I used to think about it all the time, but I never, like I just wasn't smart enough to know what was going on. I knew it was happening every time, but I didn't know like what it was. But yeah, I'd just be so fucking negative and anxious and like just dim. And then the only time I'd feel good about any of those film trips or the shit that we used to do was when I was sitting on the plane about to take off home. I'd be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like, and
I was actually sick.
And I'd tell myself all the time, I'd be like, bro, you just, next time you do a trip like this, you got to enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
But
it's hard, man. There's a lot of pressure, but like I'll be at the top of races at like World Cups and even in Australia.
You should feel it more than me too.
Yeah, I know, but people are like perfect. I love Conor Fearon. He's a legend. But dude, at the top of a race, he's always just like, why am I doing this? Like, he's fully like almost psyching himself out because like I think he knows how hard he's going to push. He's like, I hate this part. I just want to like finish. Like he's like fully like kind of in his own head in that sense. And then other people are kind of quiet or whatever. I just try and like you say, be positive because it's just like what's going to happen is what's going to happen. So like enjoy it.
Yeah.
But like it is a stressful thing.
Well, I think there's like a couple things to that. There's an anxiety that you should feel in your life for anything that you actually give a fuck about. So
I get nervous with podcasts, even though I know it's going to be fine. It's like every time I think about it, I'm like, because I only obviously get people I want to talk to and that I know I can talk to. So I'm like, it's never going to be bad.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine it, but at the same time, I still get nervous. But that's because I want it to do
well.
well.
You want it to.
Yeah, like my heart's in it. Like I want this thing to grow and I want it to be good. Like even, remember I said to you, like when I read all the time, like I feel like I can articulate my words better.
Yeah.
So like since I've moved up here, I'm just trying to read more just to benefit even though I should read anyway. And I do enjoy it. But that's like, it's like obviously training for the podcast now. Like I want to start doing that. I want to start writing more, like trying to articulate in that way. And it's just like
writing would be good for you too.
But that's just like you say, like once you're nervous and have a passion or something, it's like that's a good nerve to actually carry with you because it means something.
Yeah. And I guess I always like to think about things and where's the point of diminishing returns? Yeah. So where does this worry now go from net positive to net negative? And then that's where I think you need to switch to your thinking, which is
just preparation, really.
Well, and it's like what you just said before about, well, I'm here now, so what's going to happen is going to happen. And I would think about this. This was especially gnarly for me in like jiu-jitsu tournaments because for motocross, I don't really get nervous because I'm not trying to win. Like I literally don't give a fuck. I just don't want to crash. I just want to finish a race and have fun. But jiu-jitsu, I'm like, okay, I'll definitely want to try and win here.
But how funny is that? Because both of those should almost just be the same thing because it's like.
But the way I feel about it is completely different because of my chances of winning.
Yeah.
So I have zero chance of winning a motocross race. And also there's two people that are doing jiu-jitsu and then everyone's just like watching these two people. It's like flipping a coin. It's a 50-50.
Yeah.
Whereas motocross, like, what I get?
Yeah.
12th? Yeah. Oh, sick. 13th? Cool.
Did a burnout.
11th? Cool. Yeah. Just like it doesn't, like no one really gives a fuck. But yeah, I'd always get to the point like, okay, so you've got two choices now. You either, this is too much and you don't want to be here, so just leave.
Yeah.
And if you aren't going to just leave, then just stay.
Yeah.
Like that's literally how I like think about it now. So it's like, I do want to be worried about shit, and I do kind of like want to be anxious about certain things to a point, because if you're not anxious about this, then you don't set it up properly.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't press record at the right time. You don't have a battery charge before you start it,
I think that all just comes back in the preparation. Like I feel like preparation is the thing that takes that nervous energy just lower and lower, and it's still always there, and it should be there. But the more work you put in, it just like makes that voice a bit quieter and a bit more like, oh, it's gonna be hard, but you got it.
And like repetitions too.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. But yeah, to build on that, I think that reps is also the most important thing that you can do. Like I definitely noticed through COVID when we were busting out, consistently 2 to 3 shows a week. You just feel like good. You feel ready. Like anyone could call me at any time and I'm saying yes to doing that podcast.
Yeah.
Whereas, like this week getting back from Dubai, I hadn't done a podcast in a month. And then the first one's J.O. Archer, who I like really want to do a good job of telling that dude's story, because he's been through a lot and achieved something real special. And I just didn't want to do it because I just hadn't done the reps.
Just nerves, yeah.
Yeah, not like
not nerves, but like you don't think it's going to be as
preparation.
Good as it could be. Yeah. It's like doing a race without putting the training in. You're like, I do all right, but fuck, I want to. I think a big thing I've been trying to push within myself since being here is like just put 100% into everything. Everything.
Yeah, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But really just like the smallest things, like the smallest like things that you wouldn't worry about. Be like, that could be better in some way, so why not make it better? And it's just like when you start doing that, your whole environment just becomes, and just like make things simpler, make things more like accessible, like good things, and then hide bad things so it's like not in your sight.
Yeah.
Like still have it there. I don't think you can get rid of
everything.
And that could be like drinking or partying or whatever, but just put it like so it's a bit harder to get to, I guess.
Well, so there's a book that I just read, and it's called 4,000 Weeks Time and How to Use It, and it was unbelievably good. Like it was a paradigm shifting kind of book in like a bunch of different ways. And so when you just said you're trying to get better at doing everything, just even if it's little things, there's a cool way that he talks about it in the book is that basically as soon as you say yes to something, even if it's a yes to doing the dishes, right? That means you've said no to an almost infinite amount of things. Some of those things you would rather be doing more. Some of those things you would rather be doing less. So you can almost use that as fuel to then do the thing properly, because it's like, let's say it's doing the dishes. It's kind of like a menial task, but you go, okay, well, I've literally chosen now to spend my time when I could be spending it doing
anything else,
a million other better things. So I should do this as good as possible because I've said no to all this other shit. And then you've sort of got like the flip side of that is, well, I could be doing an almost infinite amount of worse things than this right now. So I should be grateful that I've even got the chance to do this. And it's sort of, even like, for me lately, I'm like, even feeding my dog, it's like just giving him we kind of like make his food every day. So it's like, just put the most effort into that. You're here doing it. It's for blah, blah, blah reason.
And it just affects the rest of
It's it just bleeds into everything that you do. And then it's like, okay, I've chosen now to go to the beach. So it's like, I could be on my phone. I could be distracted. But like I've literally said no to all these other things. And then I've said yes to this time now. So it's like, what am I trying to get out of this time? And how do I what do I got to do to make sure I'm getting the most out of this time that I've just carved for myself? Because you'll never get it back. And it's like it's a pretty cool perspective, I think.
Yeah, I get, just actually being in it. It's funny you said that because the whole like gratitude thing, I was actually listening to, not sure who you were talking to, but I remember it might have been Powerfish or something. And it was the whole idea of just being grateful that you can do something, like you're in this good spot. I remember I was driving in my van and I had to go over to town to pick something up and it was late and I was just, when you're just like, I don't want to do this. Like you're going into a situation where like, I don't want to be in this situation. And then you've kind of said the whole gratitude thing. And I was like, I'm literally driving in like my really nice car, listening to a podcast in like a reclined seat, like in like
some of the best years of my life. And like, I just started to like look at all these positive things around me, and it just completely changed my mindset and my shift into like, oh, I get to go over and do this thing in my nice car and pick up something that I actually needed, that I could afford. And it's just like all these things in there that people would look at me like, you're like, what do you mean? But it was just because I was a bit tired and didn't want to drive 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I flipped that whole scenario, and then I just had a nice drive, and I'm like, and I'm going to drive to like beautiful countryside. It's like, all this is a positive. But yeah, it's like you say, the whole like looking at it as gratitude, not as like, oh, what do I have to do? Oh, like, look, I've got to do this.
Oh yeah, no, dude. And that's kind of the thing is like the present, and this is where I think like the whole meditation thing, if you practice and you meditate regularly, you'll kind of find that, yeah, just 10 minutes of sitting down doing literally nothing is actually like kind of a peaceful, stimulating, like there is stimulation in that. There's a lot of sounds that come, there's a lot of smells and sensate, like, so that's just the moment. So it's like you're always in the moment, you know? So it's like, even in the, like you said, the moment where you're sort of doing something, blah, 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 it's only really the thinking about that thing that would proliferate the feeling. Like if you have like a little bit of a moment of clarity and you just step back to like 10 seconds of that meditation type of, you know, then yeah, you're open to going like, I'm actually in my nice car. The climate's at the exact point that I want it. The seats are nice. Like I've got some cool music on, and you know, I'm in some nice scenery. It's like when you strip away the voice that's telling you how negative your situation is, if you remove that and then just take like really like a base level, like take the temperature of the room essentially, and like in all of its ways, it's like, fuck, the present moment is always pretty fucking nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Just down to the temperature.
Yeah.
Just alone. Just like
or if it's cold, you've got warm enough clothes on not to be cold.
Yeah.
Like there's something to like, I don't know, look into there. You know, there's something positive in that.
Because that's the thing. I know when I've been in a state where like I do shut off a bit and do get more into meditation, like it's so quick, the change in mindset. Like I know when I've gone, say you go camping, don't have phone service, don't look at that with your thoughts more or less. Like it's so fast how quickly you realize you don't need all the things you think you need. Like I feel like that's the biggest thing that comes to me when I kind of separate from that. It's like we feel like we need so much, like all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And like straight away. And then you step away from that and you're like, I kind of just need a few things and I feel pretty good.
Yeah. And if you can like find a way to build like that recognition into your life, then that's like a sweet spot to do it, you know, or like it's like I don't know, just servicing, you know, like if you build your life to where you've kind of, you've got you read in the morning, or then you do things in a certain way and they're like almost triggers, then you just end up kind of living like from that space in a sense.
Do you have certain things that you do to like keep yourself in that rhythm, like that you've got like your non-negotiables you do? Yeah,
definitely the reading thing's pretty much on that list, but I've had to be super flexible this year. Just like I've had so many life changes kind of happen, but like ideally for me, I'm waking up, making a coffee, sitting in the sun, reading a book. That's like the kind of thing that's like my ideal. And then some kind of training. Also like regularly, I feel like a better version I feel like a more correct version of myself if I'm training all the time. It's like, I don't know what, it just flushes out whatever it needs to like flush out of the system.
It flushes out a lot of anxiety as well. Like, you know, when you like get anxious about stuff, but then you just go wreck yourself, you're like, fuck, I don't even think, like it just.
Well, you're just spaced out. Like
it just takes it away.
Yeah. The you that would be anxious isn't involved in that. Like that dude that's anxious about shit is nowhere to be found when you're training, because you're just fucking rinsing yourself. Like it's just not there. And then maybe it's like that kind of reset sort of deal. But I think the other thing that I do pretty much every day will be I'll listen to some form of I guess you'd say it's like a Dharma teaching, but it's just around like Buddhism and like non-duality and that whole
like a guided thing about.
No, some of it's just like conversations. A lot of them are either books that are being read. It's like an audio book, but with some like kind of guided meditation music behind them. And they're old wisdom texts from like meditation masters. Because I find that that's the thing. There's like, I'll hear a certain line or something and it just will kind of hit.
Something,
it hits and then I'm just like, I'm there. Like I don't need to be like sitting and meditating to like get to that place. If I listen to that. So that's me pretty much like every night before bed. And a lot of them, it's either a book that's been.
Are you seeing stuff when you're hearing this? Like, are you visualizing a moment or are you just in that?
No, just sometimes, sometimes stuff will happen. A lot of times it's just like real, just blank. Like it's kind of the,
It obviously triggers a feeling at some point.
Yeah.
What's the feeling? Is it just like?
So I'd always describe it as, and so this is like, so the feeling that I would describe it as would be like if you've ever ridden moto and then you've just stopped thinking and you're not like, you're just in flow state, that's the feeling. So in Buddhism or like non-duality, that would be like selflessness, your ego disillusion, like that sort of shit. But I'd say the feeling that it feels, because it's hard to notice it on a bike, like it's not like a snap fingers kind of thing, but if in this context it sort of is. But I always describe it almost like, when you're feeling like you're about to fall off the back of a chair and then you like catch yourself.
Yeah.
That like whatever that feeling is, it's like you unhook.
Yeah, like you're there.
Yeah, there's like
you're there.
So there's something just sucks you into the moment like really, really quickly. And then it's like I would say that moment is like if you hit a gong. Yeah. It's like that moment is like when the gong gets hit. And then it just like slowly
pulls you back and then
it slowly like releases and like reverbs out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you can stay in that moment for a while. Sometimes you'll start thinking about random shit. Sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, that's it. I'm doing it right. Yeah, I'm fucking, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm doing it wrong. Sorry. Let's try and wait for that
come back
like
again.
hit again. Yeah. And then so there's like, it's a written or audio reading.
How long were you doing that before like you kind of got that? Because obviously like when you meditate, you kind of level up in a way. Like I know when I'm doing it all the time, I go to different places than when I just sit down. So how long did that take before you felt like you were going into that moment? Because that wouldn't have been probably like instantaneous. Like the first time you did it wouldn't have.
No, but I think that what I did do, because I started like through COVID is when it was really, I literally, like I lived literally like a monk. It was intense. But I think reading, I read a lot of books through that and I listened to a lot of audio from like Sam Harris and that whole app.
Yeah.
And I think the theory side of it started looking a lot to me like the reason I'd always loved riding and surfing and like I could see, I was like, oh, this is why I've always loved riding. So I started to see them describing like awakening and like all the Buddhist shit was the feeling that I got riding. And that was what I'd always, and I even went back to like early podcasts, me talking to Harry, then the first one, me talking to Robbie Madison, like all these guys, I was asking them these questions. This was kind of right as I sort of started. So I was like always obsessed with, or that was the part of action sports I was always super obsessed with. So then once I started hearing them talk about that, I sort of like had the feeling not from meditating, but from motocross. And so like for me, when I drop in surfing on like a big wave, it's that same, literally the same feeling, like almost.
Do you reckon, because you mentioned before, that's kind of like that. Do you feel like that's like teetering on that flow state thing, or you reckon that is the flow state? Like you are in it? Yeah.
So I guess it is like the flow state thing, but there's
different. I guess because it is different kind of levels of.
There's different, and scientists, when scientists talk about meditation and flow states and that whole like selflessness feeling and flow states, then there is different things happening at the level of the brain. Like they've even done fMRIs on kind of like both sorts of phenomena. So there's so it is like technically different, but to me, I saw the same.
Yeah, it's kind of like brother and sister in a way.
100%.
They're both same, but there's alterations between it. Because I know when I've been in, like like even when I do podcasts sometimes, and you
Yeah,
probably feel the same
yeah.
when you're talking to someone, like you're not present.
Yeah.
I mean, you are present, so you are fully present, and like time's
Completely
not
agree,
there.
bro.
You're not even thinking about what you're going to say. It's almost just coming out in this sense.
100%, man.
So I've only got that in podcasting and in writing. They're my two things that I can go to a place that I feel like that's the place you should live in.
That's like who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As much as possible, I believe you should put yourself in a flow state,
Yeah.
some sort of like state or meditation, because I feel like it's I don't know, what do you even call, you can't put, I feel like you shouldn't put words to it because there's no point.
Yeah,
it's
well,
like
that-
you either
yeah.
feel it or you don't, and
Yeah.
it's like it's almost when when you're trying to explain something, just gonna kind of butcher it in a way. It's never gonna, like, you're never gonna be able to explain it as good as it's gonna be.
But people feel it all the time, and that's
They understand. Yeah,
people know.
Yeah.
Like even watching TV, like anytime there's being zoned out where you're zoned out with your thoughts. But even that I look at as like a meditation. Like that's the thought that's going on in your head. That's the self. Like that's what they would call the self in a meditation context. So you can be like so focused on yourself that you're selfless almost, you know?
Yeah,
So it's like even when you're so lost in thought and then you wake up from it, like you catch yourself. People do it all the time where you're like just fully off with the fairies and then you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like you just came back from wherever you were, but you weren't at the same time, you know? So, but yeah, so I think probably it wasn't until the stuff around, I think, free will. Well, I had like, I've spoke about it a few times, but I think I had one experience in the studio where it was kind of talking about me just like looking at my ego all the time, essentially. Like that's what the podcast was to me. It's like I literally just got to see my fucking ego on display. And then I kind of had like this, for a point in time, my main goal of the podcast was to not have an ego.
And then you're just looking directly at it.
But then I'm like, that's ego. That's still ego. That's still ego. That's still ego. And like, I was on this, like, I don't know, I was just trying to get to the point where I felt like I was doing a show with like no ego. And that was my one goal, was to look like I'd come across like I didn't have an ego. But then it's like, you just go all the way down and then you're like, oh, it's ego all the way. It's ego all the way down. Like not wanting to have an ego is almost the ultimate version of having an ego.
Yeah.
And then I was like, at that point I was like, I have to look somewhere different.
Yeah.
Like I have to figure out like this way, like that I have been thinking about ego is like, it's wrong and it just goes on forever. So there's got to be like another
different way to
point.
deal with it.
Yeah. And then, so I think it's like a combination of those things, like just essentially being obsessed with that whole concept of ego. And then, going and reading and learning about those things.
What was the shifting point when you kind of was just like, okay, like the ego is in it, but like I'm pushing it for a good reason, so it kind of doesn't matter?
Yeah, that's like pretty hard to actually. You couldn't really say whether you were or weren't. You know, like I don't know. I feel like that's a very hard thing to quantify. But I just think that there just became a point where you just believed it enough. Like I'd sort of or you'd seen it enough in terms of like when you sit down, you understand that you don't know what you're going to think next. Like you don't know why you thought that. You can kind of create a bit of a story that makes sense as to like based off all of your previous experiences, why you would have thought that. But you don't know why you thought that. And if I asked you, so there's like super random questions that I could ask you where it's like, what's your favorite movie of all time? Just name a movie that you know about.
Do you want to name one?
Yeah.
Joker, Dark Knight.
So why didn't you say Forrest Gump?
I know that'd be up there as well.
But why didn't you say it?
I know it's just like, I guess a memory, like a certain memory, it's just linked to a feeling, and that feeling that it created.
Yeah. So you're now telling a story about it that makes sense to you, but you cannot inspect that decision. Like you said Batman, you said a Batman movie.
Yeah.
When there's 1,000 movies that you like, it was as free a question.
You go so wide and the range is massive. Yeah.
But then you pick that and now you can't go back and inspect that. Like you don't know why you said
I don't
that.
know exactly why. Yeah, there's no deciding factor that's like you said that because of this,
and you would never be able to know.
Yeah,
right. It's
just a feeling that it created when I saw it that's just stuck with me. But yeah.
So there was no.
But
so
there's no
like
point describing it because no one's gonna ever. I feel like describing feelings. It's like you can't because your own feeling is always going to be different than someone else's. How something makes you feel. Like you can say, oh, like love, but love feels different for everyone. Anger feels different for everyone. All those things feel different for everyone. It's like all your mixed.
Well, it's just a story. Like all you're doing is like telling a story, right? And so like just to go back to that decision, that one. And I think this is the point where like if this like really hit, there's a level at which this can hit with you, to where it makes sense of every thought you've ever had in your entire life, because it's the same thing. Like we could just keep rattling off these questions, and that you could like sit with these questions to the point where you would fully just give up any effort or like any ownership over the
your
thoughts,
decisions, and thoughts, and where they're coming from. Like where does a thought, where does a thought begin?
Yeah, and why chocolate vanilla ice cream? Like why is there one? If you have to choose one, you'll choose one, but you'll never be able to inspect that. You'll never know. Like it'll be consistent with maybe the story that you tell yourself about your life or what, but you will never actually know. And so I think that's the point where it's like if you can sit down and if you can find the significance in just that, that's what you need to know to get to that place with meditation. And then there's a physical application to living your life like that. And not just for yourself, but for other people. So if someone says some dumb shit or cuts you off in traffic or, whatever, that it's a decision that if you ask them to go back and inspect that decision, they wouldn't know why or where it came from. Like there'd be a story, they'd be consistent with it, you'd be able to characterize it as them. But at the end of the day, it's not this authored thing that they're not the owner of that action as much as we expect people to be or expect ourselves to be.
Yeah, I get
so
you.
It's like that right there, like that's the key kind of thing. And I think that it's
like you're almost running on like autopilot.
Dude, for sure.
And mindfulness is like kind of grabbing a hold of the wheel.
But even in mindfulness, I think that you understand that the same thing applies to like mindfulness or understanding that fact. Like you're still going to get swept away by thoughts that aren't your own. But I always look at it, and there's a book that characterizes it really well, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's like, he calls it responsibility, but response ability. So we have the ability to respond to our environment, right? We might not have the freedom to respond in the way that we think we did, but we still have that responsibility. So I always say that, I guess, like the practical, we might not have free will in the way that we think we do, and I might go do some fucking dumb shit after this that could ruin my life, and you'd have to be like cool with it in that same way. But it's like you said, like if that can come online for you just over and over. So that's what I work on now, more so than just like meditating. It's like, how many times can I have that feeling of falling off the chair because I've realized, like I've seen an ugly thought. I've said some dumb shit that I would like, those triggers that make you feel like self-conscious. That's a great time to see through that self and see through that decision and just inspect what we just inspected. And then, like you said, it gives you that distance. And then I think that going back to that like responsibility thing, then you're able to respond, but in like a way that would be like more true to you. Like what you said, when you go away and you leave your phone and you leave, like you feel more clear and you feel more. So it's almost like the more space you have from like the things that hit you from the outside world, that you're not just like reacting to them. You're like got response time, and it's coming from that more like who you are kind of person. Then I think that's full circle how this whole thing fits together. So I think for me, like when that was the moment, like when I could really link together that whole concept of like how much free will we actually have, and then how that ties into the way that the Buddhist sort of stuff would talk about the self. Once those few things like clicked for me, then that feeling became like very readily available.
Mm. Do you analyze yourself as well a lot in that sense of like what you're doing to like get you there, and then obviously the thing, like not just there in that sense, but like your whole kind of environment? Do you analyze yourself as in like this to get me to that place more often? These are the things I've put in place to get there.
Yeah. So that's just listening to those texts every night.
Yeah.
And so.
Oh, but I mean like as well in like your broader life as well, because I'm like, do you go there more often? Just say like you've got it, like you're putting out more podcasts, you're eating healthy. Like, does that change the effect that then those texts give to you?
Yeah.
Do you notice much of a difference in that, or does you still just go there?
No. Yeah. I kind of see what you're saying. Like, yeah, it's.
Do you enhance it more by like
for sure.
other parts of your life?
Yeah. I think it all like works together. You'll see. I feel like it's pretty obvious to see it in a sense, like, because I'm doing more podcasts. I'm like way more active and like kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm kicking goals more and more. But yeah, I definitely, it definitely comes and goes. And I think just routine in general helps with it massively. Like any time that you can be really in a good routine, I think that, yeah, that's when you can kind of like, you're just sort of firing on all cylinders. But then that can be kind of dangerous too, because then you uproot your routine and then you turn into a fucking anxious piece of shit. But I noticed, man, like when I went to Dubai, like the first week was sweet because I was at F1 and I was just like around my friends and I had like my crew, you know, and even though I was in hotels and running that whole program, like just not really anxious at all. And then as soon as the fucking train left the station and all the boys went their separate ways, and then I was just like stuck in Dubai trying to figure all this shit out by myself.
Have you talked much about what's going on with Dubai?
No.
Do you want to chat about it?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, I suppose.
Because you've obviously went over for the F1, but then you're hanging around because you're trying to set up a bit more of like a base over there to do more podcast. Because obviously you've got the studios everywhere, you're just kind of growing that side of things. So right now you're trying to get a studio set up in Dubai and set up the Gypsy factory. Yeah,
so that's like I've been working on it for a little while. There's like a couple of parts to the plan, I guess. So like I want to get back to America next year. So that's like a pretty big goal, but I want to sort of the halfway home. I want to have like a bit of a halfway home, like in the middle of the world. And so that's going to be Dubai, and just kind of settled on like I can go there, get a cool warehouse. I want to build like I want to upgrade from this studio basically. And then I want to have like some photography type of stuff. I want to be able to make different types of content, bike builds. Like I want more space and better shit essentially. And then cause I figure like I can still use the studios that I've kind of got. I can still make the same content, but just feels like being in a big city, a big hub, just so many more opportunities for more like mainstream people, but we don't really have to change the program too much now, if that makes sense. And then have a base there to like go to Europe to do more. I'd love to go to more downhill World Cups. I'd love to go to more MotoGP races, more F1 stuff. And being here is just really, really fucking far away.
Yeah.
But I know as good as anyone.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing. Yeah. Basing yourself out of there, because then you can do more trips back and forth and it just becomes, it becomes easy. And I guess because Dubai is such a diverse city of people, like
I met so many cool people there.
Yeah. It's just like, it's crazy because I went to, I had to go Hong Kong and it just felt like kind of like Melbourne.
Yeah.
The amount, like how, like it doesn't feel like you're in Asia at all. And it's just like, I'm sure Dubai would be similar to that. And I guess, because obviously you don't want to do like more UFC fighters, obviously F1.
Yeah, like dude, the UFC's there a bunch of times. And to think about just the Middle East in general, like we're one of the bigger motorsports podcasts in the world. We should go to where the biggest motorsport stuff is. Yeah. And it's like, they've got 3 F1 races, F1 testing. They've got 3 MotoGP races. So it's like just to be within an hour's flight of so much stuff. And there's just such like a clear investment in motorsports in the Middle East. And then I was just like, I feel like I'll be going to a place and just walking towards the same goals. And I don't even need to know, I don't even need to be like intertwined with anyone. I don't need to be in bed with anyone. It's like, I get there and all of our goals align. Yeah. So it's like, if you're thinking win-win for people, even if you're not in a fucking deal with them, like it's still, I think that still leads you towards like positive shit. So yeah, honestly pretty excited about it. But yeah, I haven't really spoke about it too much. But
do you feel like this is kind of getting out of your comfort zone though? Like I feel like right now,
dude, it was crazy. It was so hectic.
But that's good though. That feeling of like, I've been killing it. It's going the right direction, but like you don't want to coast. You want to be like, all right, let's jump back into it and let's do something which you kind of don't. Because I feel like if you go through life and you know the result, what's the point in doing it?
Yeah.
Like even if it's a good result, if you kind of can see it coming, like I looked at like certain races sometimes I'd go to and like I could see the whole weekend play out.
Yeah.
And whether it was good or bad, it didn't really excite me. It's like I could just see, I talk to these people, I do this, I do that. And it just gets this repetition that's like, man, that's why I try and kind of like put myself out in random places completely by myself, because I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen. Yeah. You kind of just rolling the dice with like your destiny of where you're going to end up.
And then it's like 1 + 1 = 2. So it's like that plus I'm a good person equals whatever it's going to equal, you know? And then it's like that plus shit person equals whatever it's going to equal. So it's like, you're lucky you're a good person. So like you go and you meet these people and like good things start to happen to you as a result of it, you know?
Well, I was going to ask you, because I remember the first time we talked, I mentioned luck and you said you like don't really believe in luck. And then we talked like 2 or 3 podcasts later.
And it's all luck.
And you were just like, I see the luck thing now. Like,
Yeah.
I get what you mean. And like, I think luck's, what is it, when hard work meets opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's like you're building your own luck. But at a certain point, you are like, some shit just happens where you're like, I'm a good person and that makes more luck.
Yeah.
But still,
it's
luck is
karma.
luck kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I think that, you know, even to go back to what we were saying about your thoughts, your thought in that sense, it's just luck. Like what you get is pure luck, because you don't
like letting go.
You don't know what your next thought's going to be. So it's like, if it's a good one, that's good luck. If it's a bad one, that's bad luck. Like literally everything is just luck. And I think that that's the secret of living a good life, is understanding that it's all just luck, and then doing whatever you can to influence good luck. And then that's what's called karma.
Yeah.
It's like you just put good out into the world. You could be the best fucking person in the world and get creamed by a bus.
Yeah.
That's just like bad luck, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like just being the best person means you're going to have the best life, but you're just fucking up in your averages.
Yeah.
Really, because it's like you got no control over what's going to happen, but you can control these tiny few things, and then those tiny few things may influence other things out in the environment that could potentially give you more luck. Like that's literally the fucking game we're all playing.
And it's so nice. I feel like walking through life with lots of luck. Like you obviously got like I said with you where I've ended up now. Like I just feel super lucky, but it's just like, I'm like, are you lucky because you're really nice to one of your mates? That then it's like, oh, you can come stay with me. I'm like, that is luck that it happened. But at the same time, it's like you create that by doing stuff.
Yeah.
And like, dude, you flow through life so much smoother. Like being rich in people and like feeling lucky in that sense. Like you're so much more wealthy than if you've got money. Like one of my mates met a guy the other day. He's got a heap of money. He has like a massive house here, and I think because what my mate got from being there is like he just needs connections with people. Like you could tell, like he was almost like it's like
starved for it.
Yeah, like needs connection with people more so than money. But it's so funny how like people draw themselves to this money. I'm like, yeah, you got a big house and that, but are you lucky if you're not actually happy? Like you're missing the thing that you need. So it's like in that point, it's like, and like real connection with good people is going to be way more valuable than having $1 million in the bank.
Well, I always just, dude, Sam's literally rich because he's nice to people.
Yeah.
Like he's the example of anybody. Like
this is Sam Moore as well.
Yeah, Sam Moore. Like if you want to make it in life, just be as nice to people as Sam is to people. And you will 100% your life, like you will end up rich unless you have terrible, terrible luck. And Sam has had some terrible, terrible luck and still fucking rich. So, and he's rich in people and he's rich in money and he's just fucking rich in general. And it's because he is an unfucking believable person. And he's like, he's so over the top giving to people that it's like a burden to his life in some senses. Yeah. And then I look at me, like I feel like I'm a good person, but I'm nowhere near on like Sam's fucking level of just like everyday grassroots, like generosity. And, so it's like, I look at the good luck that he's had business wise that's led him to be an extremely successful business person.
He's got charisma and he's got dude,
he's got energy. Yeah. And he's good to people.
And people are attracted to that.
Fucking
really attracted to that.
Dude, like, yeah, I mean, it's like more his stories to tell, but like literally there's like $1 million decisions that have been made by people that are like in his benefit purely because he has no ulterior motives. He was just literally for years was just this incredibly good person to these people. And then there's an opportunity that comes, bang, and it pays. And he's also the example of never like trying to fabricate that either, because it's like you can't have this if it's fabricated. And he's like, that's why I think he's the ultimate example because none of it's fabricated. So it's like, yeah, I just think to your point, like if you want to get good luck, just be a fucking really, really good person and do it for genuine reasons. I think people would struggle with, that's probably the part that people would struggle with though, is like doing it without a thought of return or not being bummed out when you do something nice for someone and then they don't fucking do it back for you. Like someone could listen to this and be like, oh, I'm going to just do something super, super nice. Go out of your way, do something over the top. Person doesn't reciprocate, and you're like, "Fuck that cunt."
Yeah,
like,
I got not stuck, kind of not to that degree, but stuck in that thought process of like, I want to do stuff for everyone, but I would not expect the same return, but at least some return, and I wouldn't get it. And
that's not real giving.
And then that's why I'd be like, that if you're going to do something for someone, it's got to be unconditional.
Yeah.
And then I started going down that path, and honestly, I stopped doing stuff for a lot of people, but I was like, But that was still okay. Like they didn't. It wasn't like I was doing stuff for people that expected it.
Yeah.
But I was just that person that I wanted to do because I wanted, honestly, for a long time, I wanted everyone to like me. I was like, I want to be that. I want to be a good person. I want to be liked.
Yeah.
And then I kind of started getting to the point where I was like, not everyone has to like me, and that doesn't matter. Once I kind of let that down as a driving factor to be like I want to be a good person so everyone likes me. It's like I just want to be a good person because being a good person feels good. That's another thing. Like I do a lot of good stuff because it feels good for me.
Yeah.
And that's like a driving factor. It's like the whole like give someone $10, I get $100 back kind of mentality. So it's like it is selfish in that sense, but it's to the point where like if you actually are helping someone, like it should feel good.
Yeah.
It should be a good feeling. I think that's why Sam would get that massively. And if you can do that on such a broad scale, it's like feeding that, I don't know what you'd call it, like feeding yourself in that sense of like good energy or feeling good.
Well, dude, and that's kind of the thing with Sam where I think that like he almost does it to a detriment. Like sometimes it's like a character flaw.
Because he feels like he has to almost.
I don't even, like sometimes, it's like, I literally don't know what his like drive, but that's literally him. And I think that's why he's ended up with so much more than what maybe he would have ever expected in his life, in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, where it's like, because there's probably where he's like off himself at times for like how good he is to people, but he almost like he just fucking can't help himself.
Yeah, you leave yourself at such a high standard. I think you can get caught up in that as well if you're not to that. Because I've got a friend and he's high energy all the time and like kind of like similar to Sam, but he tells me he gets anxious sometimes because if he doesn't feel like he can live up to that, I guess, persona that he's created within himself, that he feels like he's like, so he'll just won't go to things and won't do things because he's like, oh, I'm like, I feel fine, but I don't feel like that high of energy. And that's when people are going to be like, oh, why isn't he like, and then you start living in their reality of like what they think you are. When you're like, you can be anything and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you say you can get stuck in that thought process, I guess.
Yeah, I used to be like that a lot. Like that was always my big insecurity as a kid, was that I just talk too much.
Yeah.
You know, but then yeah, I did mushrooms the first time, and that was like the big thing that I kind of took away from it, because I just literally couldn't fucking talk. Like I was in a group of people and I was just mute for the first time in my life, and I like had to feel so fucking awkward and uncomfortable. Like, and then I got to kind of inspect what it was, and it was almost that I felt like a compulsion to make sure everyone was having a good time. I wanted to make sure the vibe was good. I never wanted the convo to fall flat. I never wanted people to like not just be sitting there with like staring at each other with nothing to do. So then it ended up actually like making me not feel so bad about it, because that actually seems like it's coming from a genuine place. I thought again, it was just like ego. But yeah, I mean that's I think that.
Why do you think that was? Because obviously you've turned that now into a job where like your job is to speak, but why, like, was there a reason that you thought you always had to keep the vibe going? Was there something that happened, or that was just your mentality was just like, I've got to be like
I think that I had a lot of, like, so I didn't have many kids that were friends my age until I was in like high school. Like I didn't really hang out with any kids in primary school at all. It was my parents and their friends. So like my parents were pretty young. Like they were like, mum was early. I think she was like 21 when she had me. So like for the first, I think it was like, yeah, maybe like the first 5 or 6 years of my life, like I'd literally just spent every single weekend at like the track, because dad was still racing or camping or whatever. And it was just all around like these older sort of.
So you're just talking all the time.
Yeah. And they just like, I always was just having adult conversations because I just didn't have like kids to be around. And then I think I just like, yeah, I just would always, for as long as I can remember, I would just fucking talk to anyone for like the entire time that I was with them.
It's crazy the amount of like how you are such a sponge when you're younger like that.
Yeah.
And what happens in the first, like, I don't know, 5 years to 10 years or whatever, like how much that will impact your future. Like so many things. I mean, like, not like, obviously that's not a trauma, but so many like.
Yeah, it's just like a way you grew up.
But yeah, it can affect you in certain ways. Like I try to unpack when I was with Cooper Chapman the other day, like why his big mental health push was like why like did he deal with it? Is it something he dealt with or something else? And he viewed it like in his dad and then how his mum reacted to it. And like that's the thing that stuck with him and why he wants to do it now. And I guess with you, like different kind of situation, but just from talking to these people, it put you in the mindset of like, I'm wanted to keep talking. And then to link that into a podcast is just like, oh, well, that works kind of thing.
And that's the thing, like anyone that has known me for my whole life, like, oh yeah, you should definitely do this, you know? And even like when I was like Jeremy from Red Bull is still one of my best mates. And he was telling me, we started listening to Rogan together in like 2013 or 4, like way at the start. And it was like literally me and him. He was the only person that I knew that listened to him. And we would talk about it constantly. And he always said from there, he's like, you have to do this. Like you're actually fucking insanely good at this. Like we do it all the time. Like we'd land from a flight, get in a rental car and have 3 hours to drive to a track to film or to do whatever. And me and him could literally sit there and like just keep the convo going for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so anyone that knows me from back as a kid, like they know, but it was also there was a source of like anxiety there though, because I would get picked on by like all my dad's mates and you know, like then the kids at school, like, oh, you fucking talk too much. You talk too, righto, mate. No, stop talking now, you know. And I thought I was like doing a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where that insecurity came.
There's always a little trauma built into that.
Oh, for sure.
There's always
yeah.
got to be something put into.
Well, because it was so extreme. Yeah. Like I was extreme with it, man. Like I could literally sit and talk for like as long as
you piss a lot of people off.
Dude, imagine that's why my dad would have just been like, this kid is so fucking cool.
I can imagine like if a young kid came up to me and just wouldn't stop, you'd be like, all right,
Yeah, just fucking
That's enough.
clip it, bro. But so it was that's like
Good
fully,
chat about what were you talking about back then?
Well,
What
so
your
I
main
was
topic?
like,
just
dude, I was the biggest fucking nerd, bro. Like I would
but
read
for what? Like just
books. Like I just
anything.
read. I used to. I was fucking telling Anna the other day. We went to like the wildlife sanctuary, and I like knew all the birds like technical names because I used to read like bird watching books and shit. Like,
Really?
I was just a fucking crazy nerd, bro. So I just talk about all the shit I used to fucking read in books and docos that I'd watch. Yeah, I was just
you
cooked.
hooked on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Do you reckon that was kind of based off, like you said, you didn't have that many like kids your age when you were younger? Like,
Well,
you
I
kinda
couldn't. I just couldn't relate to them.
Yeah,
Because I'd spent my whole life talking to adults about shit. And a lot of the dad's friends were cops. So
talking
like
about crime and shit at like
dude.
11.
Yeah,
How old
yeah.
were you? Like 11? Like,
No, like this would have been from
8?
when I was like 2, 3.
what are you?
Yeah, like just all my
Where's the
parents.
body?
Dude, I saw some crazy shit up there. But all we used to do was go to like my dad would go to races and then go camping and fishing and shit. So I'd be 6, 7, sitting on boat with grown men for fucking days, man. I did like know everything about, just knew everything about.
Was Maddie there with you?
Yeah, once Matty grew up, he was there as well.
Yeah, true.
So we used to just, and because mum and dad were young, they didn't have that many friends with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we grew up in like the weirdest fucking way.
True. I never even thought about that. It's like obviously your friends are the people that you'd be around when you've got kids, but everyone has kids around that.
Well,
same
like
age.
you'll be around my kids. Like imagine, 4 or 5 years time, I got like a 3-year-old kid,
Yeah.
and then just talking to Uncle Dean or Sam, or like you end up.
Yeah, that's your
You fully end up being if you've got parents that are like that. My parents took us everywhere. We never. I always just remember doing everything that my parents did. So and so I guess some kids don't talk as much to the adults, but I was just one of those kids. Like if there was a kids room, like a kids playroom, then I would be sitting at the couch with the adults.
Yeah, you'd be chilling with them. It's crazy how that whole like who you are around at that age and how like much impact that can have on you.
Oh, dude, it's fucking insane.
Your phone's going off somewhere.
That shit is like that's the thing that I remember the most about my childhood. That's where all that kind of started.
It's really because when you're saying you went everywhere with your parents, we're the same. So dad sold sawmills and we traveled around the world. But as a kid, like, and I don't think like even now, like you're never going to truly know how much that like
impacted you.
Yeah, impacted and advanced your like I guess grasp on the world and culture and everything. Because I feel like I'm very open, accepting, like kind of like blend in everywhere. But I think that was from traveling to America, Brazil, like all these different places, Fiji, like all this stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
And you don't realize the value in that. And like, fuck traveling with kids as well. Like I couldn't, like I would do that 100% now because I see the value, but it's also, wouldn't have been easy.
Crazy commitment.
Wouldn't have been easy at all.
Well, for us, like I went on a plane once when I was maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then I didn't go on a plane again until I was 18.
And that's when you went to America to...
Nah, that's when I went to Melbourne to work for the magazine. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's, if you look now at all the content, like we just go on mad road trips.
Yeah.
That's just all we fucking did. I was never on a plane. So it's like that, how comfortable you are traveling. I'm still just as I'm comfortable to get in a car and go to Cape York and back. 5,000 Ks in fucking 2 weeks, or Manji and back in.
It's just normal, yeah.
Yeah, because just how we grew up. Like I don't have any weirdness around that.
It's funny, hey, I feel oddly comfortable when I'm in an airport in a random place of the world by myself.
Yeah.
I feel like this weird, like I'm excited because I'm going somewhere and I don't know what's going to happen, and just being like alone but surrounded by people. It's just this weird feel. Like when I went to Ukraine to Chernobyl, I remember I was in the airport at like 3 in the morning. That's right.
You went there by yourself.
Went there by myself, yeah. But I just remember being in this place. I'm like, kind of like, what's going to happen? Like, so I don't know. I remember like being there and I was like, this is so exciting because it's so like out, I don't know, just the unknown of it all, and just being by myself in this random airport, and there's like, it's just like, I don't know why, but I'm so attracted to that lifestyle. But I guess that all kind of sprouted from like as a kid traveling and being in that environment. But just weird. It's a weird. Do you get that when you kind of like you're traveling, when you're in an airport, like going somewhere, you get that like anxious, like, oh, how's this, especially to a new place? More or less a new place. Now, if I go to the same one, it's kind of, you know how it's going to play out, but just a random country, you're like, it's just everything's so fresh and new. You're kind of like, whoa, this is.
I reckon I get that feeling more at night. Like
Really,
I reckon
when
that's when I'm just like chilling, and then I think that's when the whole gravity of like the situation that you find yourself in, that's when it always hits me, is at night.
True.
Yeah.
Do you? Because we talked about this before. You know how you go on the float, because you've done it a few times now. How have you? Can you feel like you go to that same place as what you're talking about there?
Well, so that's probably one of the craziest meditation experiences that I've ever had, was in a float tank. So shout out to Freedom Float in Burleigh. But I went in there like completely sober, and then I didn't have any guided meditation on. I was just very committed to like keeping my mind in that kind of place, because I think there's definitely like a level of effort you can put in with meditation. Like that's one of the weird things about it, is that it's definitely like it's work to do it properly, which is kind of antithetical to the whole philosophy. You know what I mean?
You do nothing, but like putting focus into something still takes effort.
Yeah, and there is like there's a commitment that you got to make, I think, at least for me anyway. So I was just, for whatever reason, I was like, no, I'm fucking committed. I'm in here. It was sort of that time thing. Like, I've taken the time to be in here. I could lay in here for an hour and just like let my mind go wild and indulge in all of the thoughts and the plans and I'm going to buy this warehouse in Dubai and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and like that. Because that's
funny you say it like that, because like indulge in it, like you actually like,
dude, that's my guilty pleasure, bro.
Yeah, you can just, because I
like binge my own thoughts.
Yeah, looking at it like that's so funny. You're putting effort into meditation to take away from something you want.
Which
has been thought. That's what. Yeah, I've never looked at it that way,
dude. When I'm not a very negative person. I don't think. Like, I think quite positively most of the time.
But you're still thinking a lot.
But I'm thinking like a fucking like a sex addict would think about sex. You know, I'm like thinking about
business.
Yeah. Like, and it's all it's good, but it's good, but it's not good, because there's a level of like emptiness to everything that I want if I'm putting my happiness there, if that makes sense. So it's like, it's positive to think positive, and it's good to think positive, and it's good. So in my case, it's like, I'm thinking about the warehouse I want to build. I'm thinking about the studio that I want to build. I'm thinking about how like the feeling of being like dialed into my lifestyle. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm going to be able to write. Like, there's all they're good,
Do you feel
positive.
like you're putting happiness in the future instead of being in it right now?
Well, yeah, that's the danger. Yeah. So there's like a logistical, and again, it's just diminishing returns. Like, everything is just like, all right, at what point is this now giving me a net negative? Yeah. But it's like the moment that you're in can suck, which like I definitely went through like probably 2 weeks of like gnarly anxiety, gnarly self-doubt, and really not on the path of having those moments where I'm like seeing through the ego in that sense, you know? So it's like anytime where I'm in that mode and then I'm like indulging in that, then that's when it starts to lead to negatives, because you're out of the moment, and then the self-doubt creeps in. And if you're in that state of just like indulging in those thoughts that you're having, when they turn dark, like you're still indulging in it in a sense. So I think that, and again, that's like a thing that that you learn about and you watch for in a sense. So you can like, maybe you'll notice that when you are kind of indulging in like the good thoughts about like where you want your life to be, because
I do that all the time when I've been laying in bed and I'm just like, I want to go to sleep. But then I was like,
I could think about how dope I am.
No, but just like when you start to put your feet, like you start to walk in the right direction, you just want to look at your next step kind of thing. I'm going to land on here and there and there. And it's like you say, it's positive. It's so positive, but it's like, all right, we need to go to sleep now. We need to like chill.
100%.
We need to relax. We need to be like, it's going to come when it comes. Like, be happy right now, just being in bed. Like, it's just.
And just, you know, like you said, the sensations, like just go back to just nothing and just feel the raw sensations of like being alive right now, like breathing the air, like feeling
everything. You take
like,
a deep breath, you just go,
oh yeah,
and you're like, oh man, like I'm
living.
Yeah, I feel
good. Yeah. So, but yeah, so like that is the ego. Like even if it's positive and even if it's good and even like you're still striving and you're still, by definition, if you're striving for something, then you're essentially like creating a duality between happy, unhappy. So like even by wanting more than what you've got in the current moment, you're then qualifying the current moment as not good enough.
Yeah.
So very like be careful, you know. So that's my thing that I'm always trying to be super careful of. But yeah, I guess to go back to the float tank thing, it was like, I probably spent like 20 minutes of really trying to, and for me, it's breathing.
What float was this? Like how many times have you done it to this point?
Probably like a handful.
Yeah. That's what I always tell people. Don't just go once and write it off because it's like meditation. It takes time. It takes time. Yeah. My second one honestly was like really the first one sucked. I just bumped around. I was like, this is stupid. Why am I in here?
Yeah.
My coach convinced me to go on again. Second one, I felt like I had 10 Red Bulls. I came out with so much, like I was like bouncing and I was like, oh, and then from that moment, I was like, I was converted.
Yeah.
It's like holy water. It's like, I blessed you. And like after that, biggest advocate.
Advocate. I should do it more than what I do, to be honest. But yeah, I had like, I reckon 25 minutes of just like really trying to zone in, got lost and thought a few times. And then the tank just started like literally, it was like, you might be able to relate to this, but it's like you can see the edge of the blackness. Basically. So it's like you're in this tank.
There's stuff there. Like I see like shapes and like it's like when it's just like honestly it feels like a weird different universe you kind of in. Yeah. You're like you're in space.
Yeah.
There's stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize, but your body's fully asleep at this point.
Yeah.
Like that's when you get the twitch and you'll come back sometimes.
Yeah.
But like you're just lucid dreaming and you don't even know you're asleep. You're just in this state and then the like lights come on. It's like it's been an hour and you feel like it's been 5 minutes.
Well, so I ended up it felt like I could see the edge the whole time. Yeah. So it's like my eyes were open, but it was pitch black, but I felt like I could see where the walls were. I could feel what I was in. There was still a me there to feel that, if that makes sense. And then it just started expanding. So like the black just started to get bigger and more open. I couldn't feel the walls anymore. And then everything just expanded and I just was like, kind of had a bit of a realization like, oh, you're in a special place now. Like you don't get here very often. And
that's
then
cool. You're aware of that while you're in it. Cause I've done that before when you're in it and you're like, oh, I'm in it. Like you kind of view it, but you still, it's like being asleep and knowing it's like being in your dream pretty much.
Yeah. It's like lucid. Yeah.
You're actually awake in your dream.
Yeah. And that's something I've had crazy lucid dreams my whole life. So I think that's probably something that
adds to it.
Yeah, like that's probably something that sucked me more into meditation as well.
Yeah, I get you.
Because I'd had like my whole life of these lucid dreaming and night terror experiences. But yeah, the tank literally just expanded for like 40 minutes, dude. And then I just stayed there and it was fucking crazy. Like I just felt like I was just expanding and expand at one, like couldn't tell you how big, you know, I was gone. And it was
infinite
just from breathing and staying like focused to a sense to a point where then I didn't have to stay focused at all. And I was just in somewhere like in this crazy place. And then probably with like a couple minutes to go, I sort of like kind of lost it a bit, started like thinking about it. But it's almost like I felt like I'd been there enough in like a weird way too. Like I was like,
you're content with it.
Yeah. And then I just come back and I was like, fuck. Like, and this was this would have been like over maybe like a couple years ago, man. So like, and then I think this is why people like doing psychedelics because it's almost like you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that other place. Like I know it's there and I know it's in my brain, like whatever the fuck's going on. It's like, it's accessible and I've seen it before and it leaves like a bit of almost like a residue. Like it just sort of sticks around. Like the impact stays with you. And that did that for me.
That's funny. Like even when you talk there, like about I guess, like the psychedelics, it's almost like people want to go to that place, but without putting the work in.
Yeah.
So it's like if you can put the work in and do the reps mentally, and then you go into a situation like that, it's like you get what you're chasing anyway.
Yeah.
I guess like most drugs like that, they're literally just a shortcut to happiness. But with obviously the negative impact.
Yeah, but then they don't give you.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
Because it's all about the context. And like for me, that's what I mean about, it's almost like when you've realized something enough, you don't need to realize it anymore. You can just it just is what it is. And I think that's what you're chasing with it. So it's like when it comes to the meditation thing, it's like I don't really care to have that experience all the time. Like that's not the point. The point is just you've seen the thing enough times that you can just live your life. Like you take the good lessons from it and then you just like live your life from there. And then that's the bit that feels good. Like it feels good when you just are doing it to the point where it's just affected how you think about your life.
I think that's the thing with meditation. You're not doing it for like a reason. You're like, I'm going to meditate because I want this.
Yeah.
I think once you go into it, that mindset, you're kind of already tainting what you're going to get out of it. If you go into it with like no thoughts kind of thing.
Well, so I think people think that it's like, it's almost like getting high in a sense, to where it's like if you meditate in the morning for 10 minutes, you get a meditation high that then slowly wears off by the time you go to sleep. And then you don't need the meditation high when you sleep, but then you get up and then you get your meditation high again. And then it like lasts all day. It's like it's like a slow release Adderall, but for mindfulness.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what people think they're like getting from it.
Yeah.
And maybe it sort of has that quality in a sense. And then people think that if they're not getting high from it or they're not getting those feelings from it, that it's not working. But it's like, you shouldn't be wanting, that's not how it works. I feel like you meditate and that's more like a gym session than like you get high on it and then it stays with you. It's like a gym session where you're like slowly building that muscle. And then the more you build that muscle, the more of freely available strength will be with you in your daily life. So you're not trying to be strong at the gym. You're going to the gym so that you're strong for all the rest of your life. And then you don't need to think about picking up something heavy because you're already strong. You just
do it.
You just pick it up.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you heard the thing? I really like this. It's like you should meditate for an hour a day unless you're really busy, and then you should meditate for 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm like,
good luck.
Yeah. But I just find that funny. It's like, you're meditating for the rest of life, but you're not really, you shouldn't put such a big emphasis on like, I need to do this. And then if you do it and it doesn't get the result you think you should, then looking at it as a negative.
Yeah. And then like
counterproductive, really.
Yeah. And then actual practical advice is I have a couple of moments where I've like almost bookmarked them as moments in my life where I've like got to be mindful. It's like, this is one of my places. One of them's where when I'm walking up the back stairs of my apartment, you know, at the back of mine, and then you can see the lake over the other side. That's like the sunsets there. So whenever I'm like coming up the stairs after work, it's kind of around sunset, and the sunset's always there. So then that's like one place where I'm like, even if it's just for a second, just try and see that, you know, like just try and have that feeling for 1 second, then just walk into the house. And so it's just like little moments like that, moments in the shower. Cause like the shower is the place where people could recognize the most where they're fully lost in thought, where they're like on autopilot, but just like indulging in whatever train, because it's such a routine thing. Like you could have a shower with your eyes closed if it's the same shower that you use every day, you know? So just like set up these little spots. Other one's making coffee in the morning. I try and like not have that thoughts going, because like by the time I'm making a coffee, I'm like, right, I got to DM this person, I got to reply to this, I got to do this, I got to make sure this guest is fucking, what content's going out, how'd the videos do it's just like I'm just fucking valve bouncing. So it's like,
it needs to be like your time to like,
and then that's a trigger. I'm like, notice that's the way that you think there. Then look at those thoughts, look at where they came from, look at have the insight, and then you can just kind of, you have that moment, then it just goes away, and then you get back on your merry day.
It's crazy how tricky that is, because it's like, especially with building like a business that is so pushed through social media, like with my obviously athlete page or podcast, it's like the more like you feel like you let yourself off the hook with being on your phone so often because you're like,
for
it's
sure.
got a good purpose.
Yeah.
But then you just, again, it pulls you out of what we're talking about
just
here.
diminishing returns.
Exactly.
You just got to go straight back to
Man.
diminishing returns.
It's such a balance though. Like
Yeah.
I'm every time, okay, like I remember you talking about this when you're like, business is going good, but rest of my life isn't going good. Or like life's going really good, business isn't kind of going good. It's like that sense of like where you get that balancing act to make both of them run at a point where you're still happy and the business is growing.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky thing to do, especially when we're like, you push so much of like getting away from your phone or social media, but then building a business that is directly linked to social media.
Yeah. And I think that's where like the why comes in. Like, why are you doing it? Like, what do you genuinely get out of this thing? You know, and I think that's when you've got to fall in love with like almost like you got to fall in love with the process or whatever process you're in. You've got to like fully be in on that process. And then I feel like you don't get as steered away from it, if that makes sense.
No, I fully agree with that. When you're actually doing something for just the sake of wanting to do that
thing,
the result doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
And that's a thing personally with racing that I looked at was like, you'd have a shit race and everything looked pointless.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you got fit, you got healthy, you're around good people, you get these cool opportunities, you're traveling, all this shit just like wiped it because of like a bad result.
Yeah.
So it's like, you put all your happiness or like your fulfillment in that small incident on a weekend of like getting something mechanical or flat or just not riding to your full ability. But it's like, look at all the, like even coming up here, man, that's why I'm so happy to be here because I'm like putting myself in things that I just enjoy it. Like I enjoy going to a gym and suffering with other people and like pushing myself. I enjoy going
to a bunch of hot fucking.
It's not a bad gym.
Unbelievable.
But it's like you go to these places. I'm like, I just enjoy doing that anyway. So it's like if you enjoy the grind and putting yourself in those situations, it doesn't matter what you get at the end. And because it doesn't, in your head, it doesn't really matter. Like it means everything, but it still doesn't matter in a way. It's like if I do well or don't do well, I'm still going to be happy with what I've done to get here. So if you do that, it's like you don't ever lose really.
Yeah. And I think that, so this is the balance that I try and have in terms of when we talked about like indulging in your thinking. I always try and have enough of a goal in front of me that I can always justify like not getting the best views, not making the most money, not, you know what I mean? Like the small losses. So it's like there's, probably 6 ways that the podcast can earn money. And on every single month, like I'm probably putting the most amount of effort into like 2 of those things. And then it might switch the next month. And then in my personal life, there's like all these other things that I'm like, again, it's like these verticals that you've got. Am I sleeping enough? Am I doing enough exercise? Am I riding bikes? Am I doing jiu-jitsu? And am I hanging with my chick? Like there's all of those, these like variables that I'm trying to like keep, consistent. But you're just never going to nail all those things. Or at least like I have not figured out a way to nail all those things. And like that can be kind of demoralizing on like a daily fucking basis when you just like realize all of your shortcomings. But it's like, that's the one place where I'll go back to that positive thinking because I feel like, oh yeah, I didn't put out as many podcasts as I wanted this year. But like in reality, I've had this whole Dubai thing in the background and it's just been taking so much of my attention. And then I've got staff that I'm trying to give more responsibility. And then I've got, I do have the Dubai thing coming up. I do have potentially, like hopefully I have a great new studio. So it's like and that's like a process when you understand that's a process. So it's like none of those things I can just click my fingers and make them happen. Like I've got to be.
And even if you could, you wouldn't enjoy it. That's the biggest thing. It's like as soon as it comes easy, you don't appreciate it.
Yeah,
like
and
the process now is what's going to make it good.
And it's always changing. It's just like a mirage. Like it's like this shape shifting thing.
Yeah, it's next
that you never kind of quite get there.
You don't want to get there either.
Well, and you can't get there.
Yeah,
So it's like, and when you can't, that you won't get there, you can't get there, and it's always going to change. Then you're like, okay, I've just got to love what it is. And what it is just a process. So it's like when you've got that bit of a goal or like you've got the direction of where you're going, it makes it okay to fail in the moment. And it's like, I don't know whether that sounds bad, but or like maybe there's a way that you could take it bad. And again, there's like a balance there. You can't fail to where like you're going to fucking lose everything. But it's like, yeah, I didn't have my biggest month on downloads ever. I didn't make my most amount of money. I didn't get to as many jiu-jitsu classes I wanted. Like I wasn't perfect this month, but it's like, it's all right. I'm still going that way. And like, I feel like this is going to help me in this like part of my life. So it's almost like, yeah, having those goals and like being future thinking in a sense can kind of like wash away your failures in the moment.
Yeah.
Because like at least for me, like if I'm really honest with myself, I'm just failing at every fucking, I'm failing at every like.
In what sense though? Because it's like you're failing in some stuff, but then other stuff you're like,
yeah, but
you're in that part of that grind again where you're like, I'm not winning in this, but I'm putting the building blocks to win later.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You're like, if I looked at my life in like a month block, like last month, didn't do as much jiu-jitsu, didn't make as much money as the month before, didn't get as many views on this well, in last month we did, so last month we did insane with views, didn't do as much jiu-jitsu. So it's like, didn't read as many books, so there's always these metrics where I definitely didn't live up to the standard that I would have liked for myself, But then guess what? I got another chance next month.
Yeah. You can bet. I saw, so I'm doing another glove with Fizz.
Yeah.
Shout out Sammy again. And I've got this idea for like a Rubik's Cube kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're saying there how like you're balancing everything. And I'll see if I've got this photo. But I saw this photo and it's like of a Rubik's Cube with everything. It's like kind of like your life is on it.
Yeah.
So imagine like each block of a Rubik's Cube is like a part of your life that you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And like you shift it one way and some like, okay, there's a few more squares that have like lined up. So that side's a bit better, but this side's like all jumbled to fuck now.
Yeah.
And there's like jiu-jitsu stuck with motocross or something. So that's going to link. And you're constantly changing this Rubik's Cube, trying to get everything on the same side, which you probably can do, but man, that's a lot of twists and turns before you can get there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's yeah, I mean sometimes like again there's probably like a balance to be found with it as well. And maybe sometimes I'm like too hard on myself in that sense.
So you zoom down the bottom, it's like kind of that whole thing is like you set your life up. So it's just all the different activities, just random shit, but it's like that obviously would make up your entire life. And it's like how you twist that to make it try and line up
it's super cool.
It's fucking tricky.
I like that idea.
Yeah, ideas, man.
You are an ideas, man.
I pride myself. I don't know where my brain goes sometimes, but like
literally
have no idea. But I can like I don't know. It's built in a way where it's come up with stuff like that. It's like it's so good when I'm around people that then create it.
Yeah.
Like even like my last girlfriend Isabel, like she was really good because I would come up with ideas.
She complimented what you couldn't do.
She could create it. So I would put these ideas to her, and she's like, "Where are you coming up with this shit?" And I was like, "I don't know," but she would then bring it out. And I can like visualization's massive for me. And do you do much of that with like you like planning something or seeing?
Yeah. Like I feel like that's probably one of the, I guess like, I don't know, things I can do easily for me. Like if it's a good idea and if I can see it, that's pretty much all I need to just go.
Have you like seen yourself in your studio in Dubai, like in the factory, like something like to that extent?
Fuck, that one's been a hard one. Like I can see it, but
you're not quite, you're not there, you're not in it.
No. Like I still feel like I've got a long way to go to make that happen. But yeah, I mean, that actually, it's a good question, bro, because that actually is, I feel like I probably haven't even let myself do that as much yet because I've got so much situations. I've just got so much other shit I feel like I need to do to like make it happen. Like still feels like kind of far away, if that makes sense.
I've like for me, dude, if I can put myself in that situation, it fuels me in the now.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to it on your podcast before about like I'll put myself in situations where like I'll physically be in this spot and I'll bring out so much emotion in that moment where it's like
it feels real.
It feels real. It feels honestly like probably realer than it would actually feel when it would occur because that's happened in the past where I've like created a feeling through visualization and then lived the moment in person and it was like a little bit less. It's just like that is insane to me.
Well, I feel like when one of the gnarliest examples of that is I actually had some crazy fucking examples of it, but the Dream Ride videos, like that first Dream Ride, literally I watched that in my head before I made it.
Yeah.
Like exactly how it looks on fucking YouTube now. Like because we designed all the jumps. Wait, actually I'm going to piss before I tell this story.
Yeah, that's all good. Good, yeah.
Just go again. Keep going.
Yeah, I just left it running.
Yeah,
I don't have to edit them anymore, so I can give it to someone else to do it.
Yeah, so Dream Ride, because I knew the property, I knew where I wanted the jumps, I knew like kind of the layout. That was literally one where I could like see in my head before I even shot it. And we ended up making the jumps that way. We, like a lot of it ended up kind of going like that. And then the second one was pretty much the exact same. And then I even had like, this is probably one of like the weirdest ones, but I had my visa, my work visa, and then I lost my passport, which means that I lost my visa for the US. So I had to reapply, but I still had my whole life was over there and I had like bills. I ended up like fucking, yeah, I had to buy a bunch of shit. So I ended up going back on a holiday visa for like 2 months. And then I was just super sketched out by it. There was like this one dude at customs that was at LAX that was like nice and smiling and like, he was just looked like such a G. And man, I would just visualize like fucking crazy that I would get that guy because he wasn't gonna be like, oh, why are you on the fucking, you had a work visa, you lost it, now you're on this, you know, like it's just questioning that I didn't want to. So I was like, he's the guy I need to get to. But then you've got like,
what did this guy look like?
Just a nice kind of American, like fella. Navy SEAL kind of looking dude, you know?
Yeah, go on in, come on.
Yeah, and I've never seen one of those dudes smile. And it was like dead ass in the morning, like that LA flight. And then there was like a split lane and then a split lane. And then at every point, it's not like you could choose where you were going. There's like the person that tells you the line to go in. Yeah. I ended up getting this motherfucker and then I asked him about Sunday football and I was like, oh, what did I miss? Like, because it was like a Monday morning or something like that, you know? And then he was like, oh, dude, the Chargers, fucking. I was like, oh, you from SD? And he's like, yeah, man. And then he just let me straight in. And it was like, dude, I was fucking tripping. But that was so, I did not think about anything other than the exact interaction I had with him. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know what I believe around that. Like, that's probably more just good. That's good luck.
That comes back to being a good guy. Hey?
But, oh, dude, I don't know. Just the fact that I got that dude was one of those moments where I'm like, you just got to believe, brother.
Go in. Oh, man. So, yeah, I think just be a good guy and it comes back. I was going to go back to when we talk about Sammy and obviously with Fist and him starting that up and you starting up the podcast. And then we were chatting the other day about like Ned Brockman. Yeah. And obviously with Sammy's business, with your podcast, with pretty much anything you start, it's like you talk about before you put in all this work, you become a monk, you just shut off from everything, you just go hard at something. And then as it grows, people see that, like, obviously once it starts exceeding, that's when people view it. Yeah. And like you were saying, it's like Ned Brockman is the perfect example of that.
Dude,
it's like
for sure.
Run over halfway before anyone even picked up notice. And
Can you imagine what he would have been going through?
But that's what everyone that starts at something goes through. He just put that into a month. Yeah. But like it magnified it massively. But that's like you start off, no one really gives a shit.
No, dude.
No one
and they
cares.
Shouldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
You've given them no reason to care.
Because people don't like words, they like action.
And dude, that's the more that I've done the podcast, the more I've gotten away from being the kind of person that says I'm going to do things. Like that's why I haven't spoke about the Dubai thing. Like even until right when I went there, and like I still didn't really talk about it, you know, because it's like I don't have a warehouse there yet. I don't have like there's a lot that needs to go down for that to happen, you know, and like I'm working on it, but I just don't really care to fucking say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like they're the people that just piss you off the most, you know, and you rob something from yourself in a sense where if you tell people what you're going to do and you like, you know, it just looks like you're sort of bragging and full of shit. Yeah. But B, then you rob your own fulfillment at the finish line. Yeah. Like when you actually did this thing because you wanted the validation that's attached to achieving a goal. You were seeking that the whole time and you were on like a drip feed of it, you know? So like by the time you got the big hit, and that's why I think when you were saying before, it doesn't even feel as good as the moment in the actual moment. Because I think a lot of times we've like ruined the moment by like saying we're going to do it. And there's a sense where when I've looked back at that in my own life where I almost wanted to say I was going to do things that were like really bold and ambitious, to almost like lock myself into doing them.
Well, it keeps you accountable, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
But I find like
But there's another level to that where you just do it for your own reasons. You don't need the validation through the process, and then you just get it at the end, you know?
Do you find like, I guess when you, like I'll think about something for months, possibly years, and like I'm going over this in my head constantly, and then I'll come up with the decision. And like the final step is telling someone, but it's already, I'm going to do it. And I had a friend of mine, Sam Purdy, and I remember, I don't know, we were out somewhere and I said I was going to do something. And then literally, I think it was like go to Tasmania and do like this fire twirling class thing. And I was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. And then literally the next day, and then
once you'd said it,
once I said, but it was already like, I knew I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And then I got back from that trip and he's just like, one thing I noticed, man, as soon as you say you're going to do something, within the next couple days, hours, minutes, whatever, you do it.
Yeah.
I was like, why else would you say it?
Yeah.
But I think it's the whole thing. It's like people want to brag about it, but people obviously don't see in my mind or your mind that like
we've thought about this for a long time.
Yeah. There's time behind, like you obviously don't see the iceberg underwater, and that's obviously all the thought process that goes into it.
Yeah. And then I think that there's definitely an element too of like you're trying to read the room on your idea to where it's like, oh, is this a good idea? Like that's basically, you tell people your ideas and then you're just waiting for like, all right, now tell me if this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's people in my life that will know all my plans. Like Sammy's one of them. Maddie's one of them. Like there's a few, like Shane, there's a few boys where I tell them all my, like I just probably lay it on over the top, but it's like, I'm doing that in a sense of like, righto boys, what am I missing?
Yeah.
You know, like,
is
this fucking stupid?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then for the most part, it's like, I don't want any validation after that. I don't want any, you know, it's just like, I don't want to tell other people. Then I just want to like kind of crack on with it.
Because also people like, you've got to be so careful who you tell things, because no matter what you say, they're going to somehow alter your view of what that thing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember when I first met my last girlfriend, she was from Tasmania. So didn't know any of my friends, completely separate friend circle, everything. Like no one knew anything. And I didn't want to tell people about it because I thought like, I was just so into it, so in love. I was like, this is perfect. And I knew as soon as I told someone else about her, no matter if it was a good or bad opinion, it would somehow alter my view of who that person was. Yeah. Because how often do you start seeing?
Oh, for sure,
you start seeing a girl and you're like, oh, this is a girl I'm seeing. They'll be like, oh, she's cute, but like I don't like this, or oh, she's amazing. She's so. No matter what it is, then you've got their opinion.
I completely agree.
So I just kept it a secret. I just kept going to Tassie, not telling anyone, and I'd come back super happy. And everyone's like, what's going on with Dean? And I was just like, I'm just having a good time. But I was like, when something's actually, it's like when you have a feeling or a thought or something. It's like when it's actually so good, it's like, that's yours. And don't bother trying to share that with someone because they're not going to understand it. And then,
it's like you said before, you can't explain a feeling.
You can't explain it.
You can only feel a feeling.
Yeah. I watched a movie. I can't remember what it was, but there's someone like, they asked about like a story they had and they're like, oh no, that one's just for me.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think we try and share so much of ourselves that we don't actually give ourselves the time to just be like, that's my experience and no one else gets that.
Yeah. I've never really thought of it like that.
Because you would obviously have an experience that's like, I've had a few where it's like, I don't want to tell anyone about that. Because and most of the time it's like when you're by yourself or someone, maybe just one other person, but it's like, that's just mine. No, you don't get that kind of thing. Because as soon as, because you always have an opinion on that thing that would then alter what you feel about it. But yeah, I think it's just, stopping and kind of just heaven though. You can kind of look back and be like, yeah, that was a cool time. And no one else, because I guess it's hard as well, especially when this becomes a job because you want to share so much of yourself, but then it's like, and obviously you said before how like that will bring down walls personally for for the other person you're interviewing. So I guess it's like you want to be open, but it's like how much do you hold back and how much do you kind of like give out? Yeah,
that's I just never want to. I think I always think about that in terms of like I never want that to feel like gimmicky because I think that there's a way that you could blow up in terms of like being an online personality, and that's by like giving people so much of yourself that you become like this fascinating person. And I think that there's a lot of, I especially watch this in like girl creators. So there's people like like Lucy and Nikki or whatever.
Don't know
Like
them, but-
they're like the We the Wild ones. They're super cool. They crush it. Great podcast. Like, but their whole brand is like really about their personal life and like sex life and things like that. And it's like people find it super interesting and can get super sucked into it. But then I also think that there's like it's not very sustainable. And then you end up in like that sort of like what you said, it's like a feedback loop of where like you give them this, you get the response, and then they want more of
It's kind of like
more of what works, you know?
It's kind of like the OnlyFans kind of structure as well.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
Everyone's kind of got like, I don't like OnlyFans is more connection than pornography, I reckon. It's
For
like,
sure it
that's
is,
just like,
yeah.
it's like everyone just wants a girlfriend online or a boyfriend online.
Yeah,
It's like, obviously like the nudity and everything else that comes along with it is like a selling factor, but
Yeah.
people just want friends, man.
Fucking oath, dude. Like it's such a big, like a bigger component than I think people would like give it credit for.
Yeah, I think they're just like, oh, it's just porn. I'm like, there's plenty of free porn on the internet that people
Yeah.
can go find.
Yeah.
It's like they want to talk to the person behind that screen.
Oh,
But,
for
like,
sure.
But I just don't like how that would be healthy for like how that. I don't see how that can be healthy because like imagine having that amount of attention on you and that like
Yeah. And I think that's like,
sticky world to be get stuck in.
and then you get caught in that feedback loop so long of like, you give people this extremely personal stuff and then you gauge their response off it and then it changes the way that you give more. And then you can do that for a long enough period of time to where like you don't really know who you are. And then because you don't really know who you are, you end up kind of like losing the connection that you originally had because it becomes obvious to the people that you're giving it to that they're now getting a thing from a person that doesn't know who they are. So it's like a weird like feedback sort of loop. So I always just try and keep it at the level of like what's relevant to the conversation and use it as a way to like make the guest feel more comfortable in sharing their own feelings and then sort of like leave it at that. And like I'm pretty down to talk about a lot of my own experiences, but it will just be in like service of that thing, if that makes sense.
Well, I get that. It's like, especially if you've gone through shit that then has like really opened your eyes and pull you out of something, then that's going to obviously have a positive impact on what they've probably got to say.
Yeah.
Because honestly, this is another thing because it's like your guests, I feel like you get to a point now where it's like you want more like high level kind of guests, but then it's again, like you said before, but they kind of know how to do a podcast. But then also, do you find sometimes like I'm really pushing now, and I know I'm just starting off, but it's like I want to talk to people that almost wouldn't be good at a podcast, but it's because they're not so known. Because how often do you hear a story out of someone that's like they're not a storyteller, they're not an athlete, they're not any of those things, but they can actually have the best kind of stories, I guess.
Dude, for sure.
So it's like, but do you find that's when you'd really have to like open up yourself because they're not just going to be kind of like camera podcast trained? Like that would really be a...
Yeah, I think I haven't even really thought about it that much. Like I think at the moment where I'm saying like I'm not nailing it, I just think I'm not nailing it. So it's like if there's like a specific style of like guest or person that isn't coming on, it's like it's probably just because I'm not killing it to like have that, I guess. So in that sense, it'd be like probably like the business side of like the shows I've got to do to make enough money to pay for the business, because it's like it just costs money to run at this point. So it's like you'll sometimes just see like me making decisions that I guess are more being like I've been put in a position that I have to do certain styles of. So like if I was best case scenario, didn't have to worry about any of the financial side of the business, didn't have any of the editing, like any of the responsibilities on that side, and I could just sit down, focus on shows, do a show every day, I'd definitely have more of those kinds of people on. Yeah, but now I'm sort of like almost just pushed into a place where I've like got to do a certain not style.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But there's just boxes that have to be ticked, and those to me would be like the wants, not the needs.
Yeah.
If that makes
and
sense.
People are savage, man. Like I'll post non-bike related content and straight away unfollow. Like as soon as I post stuff that I'm like,
no, fuck you.
Yeah, literally. I'll post something like traveling, like travel photo, mountains, something that's like, I think that's a cool photo.
Yeah.
I'm interested in photography. I think this is cool. It's like, nah, not a bike, see ya. And it's like, that's the level you're kind of at with it. And it's pretty like you say, you're not cornered into it, but you look at the growth of it, but it's just, I think sometimes just if you got, because you remember who was the girl that worked under your studio or next to your studio? And
Katie.
Katie, yeah. And she went on like the super yachts.
Yeah.
Like that, for example, is someone, like she wasn't someone that's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a big podcast person. But I remember that story. I was like, that's a cool story. That's a cool person.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like,
She's a G. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I definitely would. I want to get back to that. And I feel like the best podcast the best era of the podcast was through COVID when I was just locked. We could do the US studio and then we could do the Oz studio. And I was just like pumping it, you know, and I was, but it was just lifestyle too. Like you were.
That's when you said you became a monk kind of thing.
Yeah. You were around me through that period where like, dude, my apartment was like comical. To the point where like you rearranged it, where it was like my life was I would drive 2 minutes to the studio and I would sit in the studio all day, every day. Most days was doing a show. Then I would come home to an apartment that had a cool housemate, jiu-jitsu mats all over the floor. I had no mattress. I just had a mattress on the floor and a fucking door for a desk, and then like a Salvo's chair that I would sit on, a lamp that Jackson gave me. I had like 100 books on my thing. There was fucking weed everywhere. And like we were always like burning incense, playing music and like doing jiu-jitsu and work. Like it was the weirdest. I lived like that for literally fucking 2 years. And it was just, that was what the time was. Like we couldn't travel. We couldn't, you know, we couldn't do anything. And yeah, I was like, that's when I could do those kind of shows. But yeah, it's just funny. Like,
but you're saying you enjoy those the most.
Oh, dude, I love that shit. But now the pressures that I have on me personally, at least in my head, of like, this is how much money has to be made every month to just pay the bills, like to pay 2 staff members, to pay rent in multiple places, to pay all of the hosting fees, to, you know, all of the shit that it takes to run the business is got to the point now where it's like, it's stressful to like do that.
It's like another level, another devil.
Yeah. And then to then add on top of that, this whole like Dubai thing, there's always like multiple big projects that are on the horizon, you know, like some of the stuff that we've spoke about that I want to try and do next year. And it's like, sometimes they don't come off, sometimes they do, but regardless, you got to put like a bunch of different work into them. So yeah, it's just like, it's a fucking like pretty gnarly business these days to like try and run.
Push, yeah.
And then, yeah, to the point where physically doing the podcast is sometimes the thing I put the least amount of effort into, which is the thing. It's the thing. And it's crazy. Like I'm really, so November we did a lot more shows. We did some really good shows. So, and we fucking smashed it. It was one of our bigger months. And that was me putting so much of my focus into the recording of doing the podcast, and my fucking life went to shit. Like I was unhealthy in terms of like sleeping, and I didn't train as much, and like I didn't get to ride as much. And you know, there was the balance isn't
tricky thing.
Yeah, the balance isn't there. So it's like I would, and I think it's all solvable, and that's all things I'm kind of like working towards. And nowadays, like it gets better, but it's a massive process. Like I could, even if you gave me $1 million tomorrow, I couldn't fix all those problems. You know, it's like, it's just part of trying to get your business better. That kind of comes
back to the mirage. It's like we're chasing a mirage that we actually don't want to catch and never will. Yeah. But we just keep chasing it.
And then that's when you come back and when all those moments, like sometimes I feel super overwhelmed with it all. I feel like Melbourne was gnarly when you like go down and you realize there's all those people. Like it's actually.
How did that feel? Like,
oh, it was fucking cool. Like,
is it different now? Because I remember you talking about how like you didn't know when people started coming up to you and recognizing you, and you've kind of like who they think you are kind of thing. And like, how does that feel now? Because obviously that will elevate and keep elevating itself.
Yeah, I think I probably got better with it. I got like better perspective with it now, I reckon. I just like appreciate it. Like to me now, it's like to me, it's one of those triggers for being like really grateful And
it's fucking cool when people come up to you happy.
Oh,
Like when people come up to you happy and excited and they share like something you said or something you did impacted them in a positive way, you're like, oh.
Yeah, I just feel like super grateful that people would want to do that. And I feel obligated to be extremely nice and to be extremely humble and to like give that person a good experience in that, you know, like trying to, but I think that's what like the podcast is too, you know, like I try and give, like that's why I cancelled the J.O. Archer one the other day. Because I was just like,
wasn't going to be to your
I was just
your
like,
level.
I won't be able to give you what I want to give you.
Yeah.
You know, like this is about you. It's not about me. And then I think that's the same when meeting people or people want to come up and get a photo or like people want to talk to you. Or if that's how I feel when people send me Instagrams, like literally when you send me an Instagram and I reply to it, I'm not replying for me. I'm replying for the person. Like this is about you. You've got, you obviously see the podcast in this way. It's obviously you value this thing. It's important to you. So then that means it's like important to me that you feel valued and you feel like the things you feel are almost like validated in that experience. Yeah.
No, I had that. It was so random, man. I was like at a lake in Palm Beach and I was actually filling up like a water jug in my van at like the Bubblers. And this guy comes and starts walking up to me. I'm like, oh, he's going to probably have a go at me like for filling up this whole water jug thing.
Fucking van life.
Yeah, literally. So he comes up to me like, oh, here we go. And he's just like, oh, are you Dean Lucas? And he was like a mountain bike dude. And this was in the, like literally there was 3 people in the park. And I was just like in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, but then I chatted with him I think his name was Ryan. He's like super nice guy. And just like had a really cool, just like 20-minute conversation with him about mountain biking. And like, as soon as they mention like the podcast or bring that up, I feel like it just brings down this wall. It's like, oh, you kind of know who I am as a person then.
Yeah.
And you've obviously gravitated toward that enough to come up and say like, hey, but it's like, it just puts down this wall instantly of like, I guess, you know how I think and you resonate with that.
Yeah, you've got some if you've come up to me and been cool, then you've seen who I am and you're cool with that person.
Yeah. And I think to have that happen in like random spots like that is just like, again, back to luck in a way, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. To me, I just feel it's definitely Melbourne was gnarly because there was like, it was a lot of people. It was just like the most concentrated version of like whatever level of notoriety that I've got out of doing the podcast is like right there. Yeah. Like if it's ever going to be anywhere, that's where it's going to be. So I think knowing that too is like, it's not like, well, that weekend in particular though was basically like we'd leave the stadium on scooters and fucking people in cars at pubs everywhere was like Gypsy Gang. Like people were just fucking losing it everywhere. And it pretty much like didn't stop until I got home because then there was like a spillover into the city and then the airport. So it was literally like every single place that I went until I got home and then it was like normal life again. But
it's a weird feel. Like it's so good, but it's like, dude, it's weird. In America, I feel like I get that. Like Americans, Americans, man. I walk through.
That's going to be scary. Going to a Supercross in America is going to be off tap,
mate.
bro.
It's going to be
like that's going to be a weird fucking experience
because they have no filter and they have no filter and they're just like. But you know another thing they're very time conscious.
Yeah,
I feel like Americans will come up.
They've just been around celebrity for like that. America invented celebrity, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Like no one give a fuck until America created celebrity.
Yeah.
So I think they
know how to do it.
Yeah, we don't give a fuck. Like, and that's probably what was surprising about Melbourne is like that Australians aren't normally like that in a sense. And no, I wouldn't say it was like they were Americans, but it was definitely can I get a photo? Can I get? Yeah. People were like definitely pumped. But yeah, dude, America invented celebrity. Like they're fucking crazy for it. It's just it's like a whole thing that they've got going on. So I think, like the first Supercross race that we go to, that'll probably be like a pretty eye-opening experience of people, I reckon.
What is the first one you're going to go to?
Oh, I still don't have a visa yet, so I still don't know. But I'd pretty much like the day I get a visa, I'll pretty much just book and go
straight away.
Yeah, even if it's just for a fucking week. I just want to go be among the people. I just want to like, guys, I'm fucking here. I care about you.
You dress up like Jesus and go and they just get the real love. I reckon if you went in with a robe,
put the sandals on. Yeah. I fucking got heaps of sandals now.
Oh, perfect. I'll get you a robe and we'll go straight in. Oh man. Just an opening ceremony, they just shine a light down. You have a microphone. It's like
hailing from.
Oh man, what did you think of the the Supercross in Melbourne.
Oh, I thought it was unreal.
It was good, eh?
Yeah. Did you go?
Yeah, I was down there.
I didn't think I see.
Yeah, I was. That was the start of this trip up here.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I wasn't going to go, and then a mate said I've got a ticket literally the day before, and I'm pretty spontaneous with doing things. So I'm like, all right, we'll go down, and then started my trip back up the coast from Supercross and landed here.
No, I loved it. I thought it was unreal. I think they did a sick job. Like the turnout was awesome. The track was sick. Like,
just being in like that environment, a stadium with that sound and everything, and just like
it's fucking dope.
Like if that could grow in Australia to a level where like that could be Brisbane, Perth, everywhere, and go to that. Oh man. Man,
well, they had like good crowds. I think the rest of the series was not done. Obviously, not done on the level that AME. Well, I mean, they technically run it. It wasn't Global Supercross that put on all the other events. And I think they definitely could be like way better. But in terms of the people that went, I mean, I think there was like 20,000 people at Newcastle. And it was in Knight Stadium. Like that was a fucking legit event. And then there was a lot of people at Wagga as well. So I think it definitely will get better. But as far as like going to MotoGP and Formula One a couple of times this year, dude, Supercross is way better.
Yeah, you don't see anything.
Fucking way
you don't
better,
see
man.
anything. Hey,
dude,
you
I
get
went
a corner
to
and that's it. You're like, sweet corner. Yeah,
Formula One. Went to 2 races this year. Barcelona, I didn't even stay and watch the whole race because it was so fucking hot that we were like, dude, if we have to walk out of here with all these other people, like we'll literally die.
Yeah.
So we just bounced. And then Abu Dhabi, I watched it in the McLaren hospitality. There's like it was cool. It was like a rooftop bar sort of thing. And they had like the McLaren stuff, but we just watched it on TV like everyone else. And then you look over your shoulder and there's like one turn, but it's like the experience of watching the actual race is nowhere near as good as Supercross. Like you can't watch.
You can watch the whole Supercross
literally
battle.
Pick anyone that you want.
Yeah, just want to watch you.
Yeah.
I want to watch Tomac. You come in 10th, I don't care. I just came here for you.
Yeah.
Can watch every lap.
Dude, unreal. Like you can be a fan of that sport so fucking easily. And then if you're taking someone else, then you can say like, oh, this is what's happening. Like follow that guy. It's just everything's like right there. You don't have to leave. Like you don't have to walk to different corners. Like the package of Supercross is just such a great sport. And I that's sort of almost why I'm like just down to fully fucking go in on it too from like a content perspective is because like I could probably make way more like money and I could probably, if I went like crazy hard into like F1, for example, it was just like, righto, let's take what I've learned in the Supercross mode. I'm just going to be that Formula One guy now and like fuck all this other shit. That's probably like a way better business model for right now. But I actually think long term, like Soupy's fully on the come up.
Where do you want to put your, like right now, where do you want to put your energy into? Like more podcasts, more projects, or like try and balance all of them?
Yeah, I got to do more. That's why I think I've just got to do more podcasts. But I have to logistically, there's like logistics that have to be worked out to where I can do as many as I want to do, if that makes sense.
And what do you want to do? Like podcast a week? Like what would you want?
No, like 2 to 3 a week.
2 to 3 a week.
Which I've done in the past.
Do you feel like though that's then you trapping yourself back, or do you want to travel and do podcasts as well? Because that's the one.
Well, that's why I want to have all the different.
So you can just go, and you obviously bank some up as well, so you can drop more content.
So that's where it's like the logistics of this, like people probably don't understand like how gnarly and detailed the logistics are of the podcast. Just to bring it like how it is now, it's like a fucking beast of it.
Yeah.
And it's
a
super
3-person job.
It's super cool though. Like it's one of the things I'm really proud of is like how dialed everything is on that front. But yeah, for me to be able to do like 3 a week minimum would be I'd be pumped. And then, but the ideal version of that is me just getting to the studio at 10, leaving at 3 and living my life outside of that. And then I can, like, I don't do fucking research. I don't ever prep questions. There's so much stuff I don't do that I should definitely do that would make my podcast definitely better, but just purely because of, having all these other things that I'm kind of trying to do. But yeah, I mean, I'd be able to train every day, do jiu-jitsu once a day would be like ideal, non-negotiable. Ride 2 times a week, ideal, non-negotiable. So it's all like the barriers around those things, like now I'm starting to really like cram some shit in, you know? So it's like what I'm working towards is building my life logistically where I can do jiu-jitsu every day, do a podcast 3, sometimes maybe even 4 times a week, ride twice a weekend, be able to spend time with my partner, be able to spend like just to have all the things that I've been doing for the last 5, 6, 7 years, have a way to be able to afford to do all of those things as easy and as like friction free as possible. And then focus on doing them all as good as possible. And to do that just takes like more money, like you've just got to build, like I feel like you've got to build your life. Like you actively have to like take the money that you earn and then spend it on, it's like you renovate your life almost. So it's like you spend money on, for me, ultimate, have a farm, have a shed, big shed on the farm that's got a studio and, a room that the boys can come and stay in, you can work. So then that's like covered there. And then you've got some jiu-jitsu mats that's covered there. So it's like you just build, you're like renovating, you're spending money on all these parts of your life to get it to the point where you can tick the boxes that you want to tick every day and then you just wake up and do it again.
What do you think the biggest resistance to you right now to creating that life? Like, what do you think is the biggest thing holding you back from like making that reality, like making that into a reality?
I think it's honestly just a process, like it's going back to that, like you've got to love the process. Like you've got to do, there's constant work that I would have to do every single day. And there's no magic switch. There's no magic button that could like make it happen. So I think it's just like knowing the process that you've got to go through and just fucking walking the walk, like it's easy to talk the talk or just walk the walk. Like I'm already so much closer to that than I was. Like when I started the podcast, I had literally no money. I lived with my parents. Everyone, like Sam's biggest fear was that I would quit the podcast. Like I quit other shit. He's like, this is really, really good. Like you're awesome at this, but I hope you don't quit.
Because it got tough there for a long time. Like I remember saying when you're just looking at your computer and you're just like, what the fuck do I do? You're like zero money.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but I definitely believed in what it could be. But I think
but it still gets tough sometimes. Hey.
Yeah. And then I think like that's again where you go back to like, okay, what am I actually doing this for?
Yeah,
like, am I doing this for its money? Am I doing this to be popular? Or do I really, really want to spend my last $300 going to Newcastle to do a Chad Reed podcast that a bunch of people are going to listen to and fucking froth? And then it's like, all right, I guess I'm just going to spend my last $300 to do that. And then I got a text from Sawley actually about Abbo Henry. He's like, you should try to do Abbo Henry while you're down here. You end up doing 2 insane, massive fucking culture shifting in my world, podcasts. So definitely gets tough, but that's when I think you just go back to your why, and they should be real simple. They should be self-fulfilling, like you shouldn't need anything from outside to for them to work. But like even fuck dude, Dubai was like so much self-doubt, like to leave building a beautiful life here.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's like all my dude, I live in the dream here, dude.
When you're like, I'm going, I'm like, have you seen it around here? Like,
dude, it's fun. And then even like, my personal situation, like with my partner, like to make her leave, like how gnarly is that?
Yeah. It's a big
crazy
jump.
Dude. So, and the level of self-doubt that I've had around that, and then like literally don't have the money to do it, but go anyway. Like I don't have, I came back for Christmas without pretty much everything I said I was going to go over there and try and figure out. But it's just like, fuck it. Like
keep chipping away at it.
Yeah. It's, and I'm already in a like that's the other thing, to always take stock of like the actual position that you're in. Like I own bikes. Like I didn't even own a bike before I started the podcast. When I bought my 350, that was the first bike I'd bought with my own money since I was like a fucking kid buying a CR125 or or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's the level of fucking broke that I was. So it's like, yeah, I'm still not I've still not reached the, you know, where I've like, this is how ideal my life would be ideal.
Yeah.
But when I take stock, I'm like, fuck, I'm like so much closer to this than I was.
I think I heard this the other day, and I guess it relates to that, but it's like, man who lacks purpose seeks pleasure. And I guess the whole thing when you like your purpose is like putting energy into this podcast to grow it, like your focus goes there. And this comes back to when you like kind of living like a monk. Like, like I just did podcast, I did this loop, but like I had a purpose, I was growing this. And especially where you live, like there's a lot of pleasure to be seeked around Burley. And like I thought that, like I remember being here for like a week and I was just like, I don't know, hey, like I remember you just saying like I'm in the cave. Like that's what Jackson called it. He's like, he's in the cave.
Yeah.
And you're just grinding away trying to grow this thing. And I guess that all loops back to like the whole Ned Brockman at the start of his run. Like you're running in the desert for 100 kilometers and no one gives a shit.
Yeah, every single day.
Yeah.
And they don't care until you give them like and that's what, I think that's what I was saying
until
before.
You're successful, until you're at the end of it. And that's like for any journey, it's like people only care about that last 5%.
Man, I said something to one of my buddies, Blake, and he's one of the people, so he's like, you'll pretty much see him next to Ricciardo, like anytime you see Ricciardo, like he's the fucking man. And he's a guy that I like really respect. And if I like tell him stuff, like, or if I'm telling him my plans, that's a guy where I'm like, I'm only telling him shit I'm going to actually fucking do. And I remember going through, we FaceTimed and he like laughed at my room and he's like, show me your fucking room. And I like showed him, like turned the camera around, gave him the tour. He's like, that's fucking awesome. And he's like, why don't you buy a bed frame, bro? And I was like, well, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So like, why would I get comfortable?
Yeah.
Like, why would I make this? I see the logic of it. But in my head, I was like, I don't want to be here. This isn't where this isn't the destination for me. So it's like, I'm not going to make, like, if you're living in hell, and this is an extreme version, like I wasn't living in hell, but it's like, if you're living in hell, would you try and get a nice bed? Or would you just do whatever the fuck you had to do to get out of it? As quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that extreme. Like I wasn't living in hell, but I was like,
it's a driving factor.
Yeah. I was like, this isn't where I want to be. Like, I'm not going to make where I want to be comfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable for a reason, because
you don't want to be there. You want to get out of it.
That's going to make you seek more comfortability, you know?
Dude, I remember going to TAFE and like TAFE was like the fucking rocket fuel in my motivation to get out, because I was like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, this ain't me, bro.
This ain't me. I remember just welding like 10 mil steel on like a 35-degree day and just sweating. And I just remember thinking like, I will do anything to not be here. And that was, dude, if you want motivational drive, it's like, look at plan B. And if plan B doesn't look that good, it's like, have you heard that? I think I've talked about it before, but the whole idea is like, you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats.
Fucking nice, dude.
It's just like,
that's my whole life.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want a plan B because it's going to especially if it's something like you've got to give 100%. If you want to be the best at something, you've got to put in 100%.
That's literally, going to Dubai without money, starting a podcast without money, or not going to Dubai without money, but going there not knowing how you're going to pay for all the things that you need to make it work. It's like literally burn the boats.
But then the thing is, if it doesn't work, but you give 100%, you'd be like, well, that didn't work out, but I gave it 100% and that's all you can give. Or if it does, you're like, I'm glad I did that. Like, it's like either way, it's kind of a win in a way. Like, you know what?
Oh, yeah, 100%, man. And I've always said, you know where a no gets you, and it's nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just don't want to be nowhere. So fucking, this is it. And I don't know, that part to me, and again, that's luck. Like if I look at those thoughts that I've got, and even people like when I was at Formula One, I'm like, they're like, oh, so you moved to Dubai. When did you get here? Today. They're like, where are you fucking staying? And I was like, oh, actually, funny story. McDowan gave me a hotel room for a week that they're not using. What about after that? Well, I don't know. I got nothing booked.
But this comes back to the whole karma thing, man. Like I've like where I ended up right now, I had no plan to be here.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to go somewhere because I want to go somewhere and it'll kind of work itself out. And I feel like being a good person just makes it easier for that stuff to work out.
Oh, definitely.
But like you've got to dive in because it's nervous taking that jump.
But you've got to be able to deal with the anxiety that comes on the flip side of that. Yeah. And I think that's
real. That's real as anything.
And I think that's the thing that you were kind of alluding at before, like that feeling you've got in the airport when you're by yourself. And I guess maybe in this context, I can actually relate to that. Like I've just always been able to turn my brain off to that. Just like, what if, what are the, like, I won't deal with those things until I'm at night, I'm alone.
Really?
And that's when I'm like, dude, I fucking shut that shit. All those voices, all that stuff, they don't come into play at all until I'm in bed at night.
Really?
And I'm like, actually, I'll just push all that shit to the side. Like that's that whole, left to Dubai without one plan, like literally without one plan. I was like, I'm just going to make all of this shit happen. And, some of it, ended up getting a bit caught out. And like, I think I spent like $2,800 on a rental car for a month. Probably that wasted some cash there.
Yeah, but even that.
But, I just was like, fuck it. I'm just going to figure it all out when I get there.
Yeah. Because would you I always tell people, like, wouldn't you rather die knowing? Like, if it's all going to end, wouldn't you rather be like, I had this idea, this dream, I went after it, didn't work out, next dream, next thing. Like, you've got to constantly be working towards something.
Yeah, and I try not to like question I never really question this whole deal. And it's like moving away. Like, if you ask me if I want to, no. Like, but who gives a fuck? Like, I don't know. Like, who gives a fuck? This thing's come up for whatever reason. And it's like, I can make sense of it and I can see a way that's like a way to go forward.
Was there something that like hit you where you're like, this is the move? Or did someone mention something? Or did you just like,
it was like
stem?
Yeah, it was like people started like mentioning to me like, oh, what's next? Like, what are you going to do next? Which is kind of weird. Like, people hadn't really.
Remember, I said this to you the very first podcast we did. I think I remember talking about that when you get like the professional ride and they're like.
Yeah. So I think it was just like, it was right around when I went to Europe for the Stark thing. And then, people like hadn't really been asking me that. And I guess it was coming from the fact that like, we were fucking doing good, and maybe it's the first time where it was like legitimately good, like millions of people watching, millions of views, millions of downloads, like actually making a living from it, actually have staff, actually it's a fucking real thing. So maybe it lined up perfectly with, because again, like I'm not paying that much attention to any of those things. I'm just fucking trying to grind, Yeah. And then it was like, I had a meeting with my accountant, and then he was like, all right, what do you see next for the business? And when someone really put it in like a business context, then I was like, fuck, I probably could do something now, like there's probably another move to make.
You got a bit more wiggle room now.
Well, just, like it's probably time to like look for another step. Like, oh, there's one there to be taken if I wanted to. And then when I went to Europe, it was a crazy 3 weeks, bro. It was like landed in Paris. This is after 2 years of monk mode. So I went from literally doing nothing for 2 years to landing in Paris, like feeling Paris, being in Paris, going to Le Mans at the MotoGP. Everyone knew about the podcast that was there. So that was like the first time that I'd had that kind of
level of
experience in a sense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, there was like some fans, but it was mostly the teams and mostly the riders and mostly like the industry.
Did you realize the fact that like you had to be on all the time then? That's something I noticed about being an athlete when people start recognizing you. There's no like, who are you kind of thing. It's like, you're on.
Yeah.
It's like, you like, and that's how it should always be. But I think when you're not recognized and you meet someone, it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? You kind of have a few like things. When someone recognizes me, I'm Dean Lucas as soon as I meet them. Obviously, and that's the thing. I guess it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. I'm just wondering that for you was like, fuck.
Well, I think that probably the lucky part for me there is that I'm trying to be myself all the time anyway. So like the people that would see me on the podcast would be like, they're probably just seeing more of who I am than if I was like if it was like random. So maybe you're right. Like it sort of cut straight.
It's just
straight to it. But yeah, I think like that was a big thing of like, oh fuck, like it's definitely international. Like even though you see it on the numbers, like Australia is not our biggest country. Like Australia is our
what is America's biggest?
Yeah, second. America's our biggest by far.
Yeah.
Like by. So it's like 68% of YouTube is like it's fucking millions of people every month.
Let's get to that Supercross.
Dude, it's fucking out of control. But yeah, so then it was like that. And then we went to the Barcelona Stark thing. And then they were like, really, you could see they valued us being there. And that was a really cool feeling because I really valued being there as well. And then we went from there to F1. And then it was like, as soon as I walked into the McLaren pit, there were like two mechanics that were full moto frothers that were just like bang straight. We were just straight like talking Gypsy Tales.
It's good when you're around people, like you say, they appreciated you being there as much as you appreciated being there. And it's like you have a level of respect to understand what you've built. I think that's the thing. It's like you've built this podcast and this platform to share. They've built this amazing motorcycle. Yeah. It's like similar brains think like, all right, you're doing good shit. I'm doing good shit. Let's combine, share that. Like we see the value in both sides. Yeah. It's good to be around people like that.
Oh, yeah. And so I came back from that being like, damn, now I'm like really far away again. Like I'm back in Oz. I'm back in the cave. And it was like, fuck, I feel like I could probably spend more time.
Well, I remember when I saw you, I was just like, I remember how you were so in podcast. Yeah, and in my head, I was like, dude, you need to get out and like go experience stuff. And then like, don't stop it. But like, would you do it? Because obviously you've lifted the podcast to this level, but you don't really do like remote podcasts. Like, would you do more stuff like that?
I don't. The only way I do it, and this might be something that I do in the future, is build like a bus or something
and travel
because just to me, like the production quality.
I know this is the thing.
It's just too like I'm too married to it, man. Like I really, as far as like the brand goes, I would way rather limit the podcast growth, maybe even,
and keep it to that high standard,
and just keep it to the product that it is. Yeah. I love the product that it is. Yeah. I love the effort people make to come to the studio. I love that when they come there, it's not a fuck around. There's never any tech dramas. It lets me relax a bit more, knowing that nothing's going to fucking break and we've got backups and, you know, the whole kind of deal. So yeah, I don't know, like, and then I also don't want to make it fuck up the moments to where like everything becomes about the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
you can separate from it.
Like I just spent a week in the first week that I was in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I was at the race and I was just like cruising, you know, and I wasn't bothering people for podcasts. We were just having good combos. Like me and Joe Ricciardo, we did like a fucking 2-hour podcast just sitting down. He was like, all right, how would you do one on me? And we just started it. We ended up talking for like 2 hours and it was
not recorded. Just
no. Like we were just sitting down like in the hospitality, just me and him having like a fucking awesome combo. Like
I just love that. How'd you do it on me?
Yeah. And because he'd never listened to a podcast before.
Oh, really?
And that was just super cool. Like I feel like so much closer to him now as a person as well. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like it could probably get a bit too much if I didn't.
Well, I can relate to that with vlogging because as soon as I started vlogging at World Cups and like it's like, what am I doing for other people and what am I doing for me? And like what character am I playing right now? And sometimes if you've got a filmer, it's not so invasive and you can kind of like let the person do it.
When with Rones and Alex, like when they're around, they're just, that's why the only time you see shit like vlog style stuff is when they film it because I just kind of pretty much forget they're there, you know, like I wouldn't like to do it the other way.
No.
I was going to try and do a vlog while I was in Dubai and I failed miserably.
Well, dude, your mindset changes completely. Like you're actually not present at all.
Yeah.
You're looking at your life as like, how is this going to be viewed, not how you're viewing it.
Yeah.
And it just like alters everything. And I find it like, I didn't enjoy it.
Nah.
But if you can get someone to follow you that is a close friend that you can just be mates with, then I think you can balance it that way.
It is, you're right though, like that need to get out. And there's one like philosophy that I've always had around doing the podcast is that I never wanted to just do the podcast. That's why the Manji trip, going to the Cape, going to Europe, like, yeah, we're filming them. But I mean, essentially too, like that comes back to economics. Like I have to do where the podcast just isn't at the point where I could go and do that Europe trip and not film it. and not make content. And I'm not going to do the podcast. Well, I kind of broke that rule for Seb Tortelli. Like there's some times where I'll kind of break the rule. But yeah, it's like for that trip, like we had to produce some kind of content, you know? So there's just like purely the economics at play with that, you know, to where it's like we're just not even in a place where we could take that trip and I could not film because we have to do some kind of content for people.
You need to keep working as you do through it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always been crazy important for me that I actually do shit in the real world and not just because I'm telling you, the way to make money is to sit in that fucking cave. Like, that's when I was doing good. And it's like you sit in the cave, you fucking don't talk to anyone, you just make the podcast and you just smash it out. Because the thing is too, is that the show gets to a point where it's like big enough where not everyone in the audience could listen to it and it still does crazy good numbers. It's not like I need every single person that listens to the show to listen to every single show for the shows to do good. So when that happens, you can make 5 in a week. And like if everyone that listens to the podcast only listens to 2, you're still doing crazy numbers. And then those people will circle back. Like so you can literally just make as much content as you want when you get to like a certain point, if that makes sense.
And when you're producing that content, you obviously want to keep it to that like same level of like pushing it as well. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that when you're cognizant of that like that's the ideal way to make money, then it makes a lot of sense to not just do that. Yeah. You're like,
you get stuck in it, man. You get so stuck in that like, okay, I do this, I make lots of money, but then again, you're not happy. And then you go do these other things, but you're like, sometimes I've got to do this for me and like not someone else.
It's like being a lion in captivity. You know, when they call it like enrichment activities, like we're like in captivity. That my box is I've got to be in the studio making, like that's me living in captivity.
Yeah.
I need enrichment.
Yeah, you need to get out.
Like I need some kind of to be put on a leash and taken for a walk around Dreamworld.
Then come back in your box and you'll be
happy. And then you can sit. But I think that's like kind of what your life is. Like that's all of your responsibilities in life. Like you kind of have to operate within these parameters. That's like this cage that you kind of live in. And then you've got to, unless you want to be off the grid or fucking homeless or like there's a certain level of entrapped that you are to your own circumstance.
Just in society as well in general.
Yeah. And then within that, you've got to figure out a way to get like enough enrichment and nourishment in your life to like make that
okay.
grind okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of always how I've looked at my life is like, okay, I need this, and this to be happy. And that is not have a job, be able to ride moto and like be able to be around good friends, do jiu-jitsu, like they're my things. So then it's like, then you reverse engineer your life. Like, okay, how much money do I need to make to do this? What business does it have to be? Or what job do I have to have? What job can I handle having? Like figure out the things that you need to do non-negotiable to like live a happy life and then work backwards from there.
Yeah. No, I see that. I think you said like don't have a job, but I think don't have a job for someone else. You said like you don't want to have a job, but I guess like you just want to work for yourself.
I think the definition of having a job is doing something like only for the money.
Yeah.
So
not a passion.
Yeah, that to me would be the definition of a job. And so there's people that could work at Australia Post and feel like they don't have a job.
Yeah.
And then there's people that like me could work 50 hours a week on a podcast and feel like they don't have a job.
Yeah.
So I think that work is the opposite to play. Like, so,
yeah, exactly.
You know, anything that you're doing just for money that you don't want to be doing, that's work. So, and then there's people that have a job that holds true for them too, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I'm just not one of those people. No. Just never been one of those. Like what you felt with TAFE, like that's what I felt I felt that with school and with work.
Yeah. All right. I only got a few more questions and I'll let you go. So I think you talked about this, I don't know who it was with a little while ago, but it's like a thing I kind of battle with all the time. And it's the idea of doing something good, but only doing it for the reason to be seen as doing something good. And, you know, when you had Powerfish on, I'm like, I see like, obviously you're doing a lot of good stuff. You're giving money to people, but like, I guess it's like, are you doing that when the cameras are turned off? and then doing, because like I'm at this crossroads where I'm like, you're doing something good and you're giving people money, so that's a good act. So I'm like, I agree with that. But if you're just doing it to get the likes and the views, is it really a good act?
Yeah, so I think that there's like a couple ways that I think there's just ways you have to think about this, and you have to think about the net positive. Like, again, it just comes back to like diminishing returns. So it's like, is it a net positive thing to do? So it's like, even if it's not, all right, so you've got someone that's going to give money to charity, but it's for disingenuous reasons. And it's like, okay, well, does the money still go to charity? Is there still like, is the effect of this net positive? And then I think that, especially when it comes to like charity, the kid that, so we were talking about against malaria. So it's like the kid that doesn't die from malaria doesn't give a fuck whether you feel good about it or if you feel indifferent, because that kid didn't die of malaria, or, you know, like that chick didn't get evicted because she got the money. So it's like, yeah, it's probably the goal would be to do it and give without thinking about any like reciprocation or it feeling good, you know, in any way. Like the goal would be for it to just feel as indifferent as, you know, opening the door for someone, or, you know, something that you just would do instinctively and not ask for anything in return anyway. So yeah, I mean, that would be like the goal. And then the next step down for that would be to do it and actually want something. But I think you could maybe even look at it as like a muscle. Like as you do it more and more and more and more and more, that feeling goes away to where it just becomes routine. So yeah, I don't know. I think I think
that's the thing. It's like the more you do it, as long as you like the whole, like when I was talking to Cooper, he's had the big thing is like, as long as you're not just a nice person on camera.
Yeah.
It's like, as soon as you're just a good person in this small point when people are looking at you, it's like how you act when no one's looking, I guess is the.
But I think that just gets, I think that gets found out. And there's like there'd probably just be like a ceiling on your own personal development. Like I think that in life you only ever rise up to the level of your incompetence. And that's like it's actually from Mike Grondel, like the book, The Peter Principle. And it's like, we're all flawed to some degree. Like I'm certainly a flawed person. And it's like the levels of success that I have in my life, even though you could maybe look from an outside perspective and like list off things that I'm successful at, all of those things that you could write on that list, I'm successful at them to my point of incompetence. So like you might be like, he's good at jiu-jitsu. I'm only as good at jiu-jitsu as my fucking shitty habits of going to training will let me be. So like for whatever outside level of success, the thing that's stopping me from more success is my own personal failures.
That kind of comes back as you versus you.
Yeah. 100%. So I think that like the level that you can get to in your life just fully depends on like the level of,
I guess the accountability and habits you put it upon yourself.
So I think that it comes down to, this is what I put it down to in my own life anyway, is like insecurities. So like, what are you insecure about? And I think that as soon as you can start to like really analyze yourself from like a third person perspective and be super critical on yourself, but not in like again, diminishing returns kind of way, but you're like, oh, you do this too much and it's stopping you from doing this, or you care what people think about you to the point where it's stopping you from doing this. So it's like, yeah, I think that to go back to the question is like, I mean, the best case scenario would be that you're a person that is just like extremely generous or nice or whatever default, and you don't expect anything in return. That will have like a certain ceiling for you as a person in life. And then there's like, you could be the person that only does good things expecting return. You're going to get to here, but you just might not like kind of get to here. So I think that.
What are you really critical about?
Oh, just fuck, dude, heaps of shit.
What do you think the biggest one is? That like
honesty, like just being honest.
To yourself or to others?
Just honesty. Because I think that And I've been dishonest about stuff, and it's stuff that I wish I was honest about. And, you know, like there's a level of, so this is the thing, but
honesty should just be the baseline for everything.
Do you know why?
This comes back to the reality thing.
Yeah.
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 Because I've learned, especially coming up here now, like being completely upfront and honest, it can't work out badly because it's like it worked out how it would have anyway. Eventually it would have gotten to that point because it's like, this is who I am as a person. This is what I want. If you don't see that the same way, that's okay. But I'm going to go this way.
Yeah. Dude, like honesty matters because the universe is an honest place in terms of like, it's just cause and effect. It doesn't give a fuck. There's no... I guess it just isn't deeper than that. And what a lie is when you're crafting another reality that only like you and another person know or like you and another person live in. So you end up, the more that you're dishonest with either yourself or other people around you, the more you just start living in like almost an alternate reality. And it might sound like hyperbolic, but I think that that's sort of like fundamentally what's happening, you know? And when you, so if you're a person that isn't honest with yourself, then maybe you're like, you do only do things for the praise of other people, or you only do things to be liked. But if you don't admit that to yourself and you don't recognize that, then you're just literally not living in reality. Like the decisions that you make aren't based in reality, which means the actions that you take aren't based in reality. And then you start going this way while like the real world's kind of going this way. And the further away you fucking get from that,
that's a stressful place,
dude.
That's the
anxiety. Yeah.
I can't lie because of how it makes me feel, in the sense of like, you got to keep check of everything.
Fuck,
it's like you're constantly playing this game of like, what did I say?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Or you end up facing the repercussions
you will,
of living in a world that isn't connected to the world. You know what I mean? So it's like and I think that more comes down to like lying about yourself. You'll start to have these things happen to you. Like, and I was definitely like this at a point in time where like bad things would happen to me and I'd like, fuck, this shouldn't have happened, you know? And I'm like, no, bro. Like if you're honest with yourself, like how could this not happen? Like you didn't handle the things that you were supposed to handle. Like you let it slide. That was reality. Like you didn't deal with reality. You weren't honest with yourself. You didn't deal with the things properly that were happening in your life. This is the fucking consequence. Like you lived here and the world kept going over here doing this, and now you have to face this, you know, like you always have to like pay the piper.
It's like not doing up the bolts on your bike wheels, and then when they fall off, you're like, oh, me again.
Yeah.
Like,
or you fucking train, or you think you've trained hard for a race, and then you get to the bottom of a race run, you're fucking blowing out your ass, and you're clearly not fit, and then you're like upset at the team because the bike wasn't great, and that's why you didn't fucking win the World Cup and you got 15th. It's like, okay. Really? Maybe.
That's pretty much like, honestly, what you just said there is pretty much like, I can say it as like a mirror effect on where I was at. Because I was in that point, and it's like being honest with yourself, like, and trying to like verbalize that as well. But like, I wasn't where I needed to be. Yeah. And I take account of that. And I'm open about it. Like, I wasn't in it because I didn't love it. I didn't love it because of my environment and what I put myself, like I did the thing that pulled me away from the thing that I wanted to get better at. Yeah. But like once you take accountability, and that's why I moved up here, man. That's why I'm like changing my entire life to counteract that negative. Yeah. But it's like you say, just being honest with yourself and be like, shit, man, I didn't.
It's so easy to lie to yourself.
And it feels good, man. You're like, oh, it's this and that, and blaming other people. But as soon as you take accountability, it's like, shit, man, this is all on me. And it's always all on you.
Fucking oath it is.
That's the thing. It's like everyone's like, oh, this guy and that guy. I'm like, it's you. Yeah. It's 100% you. And once you realize that, and like, it doesn't feel good, but once you obviously get in that place and then work forward, it's like, you stop, dude, victim mentality is the biggest load of bullshit. It's like, oh, poor me. I'm like, I didn't get this. I didn't get that. I'm like, I can guarantee you there are people further ahead of you that have had way less than you, and just stop with that bullshit, poor me shit, and went, okay. Because like proving people wrong as well, that should be a motivator. Like I was here and now I'm here, and I did that all myself. Like that should be the fuel that like lights a fire into your ass to be like, let's go forward into that. But yeah, man, I've seen it like even in my family, like the whole victim mentality kind of thing. And then like once they realize that and come out of it, it's just like
oh,
it
man.
doesn't serve you in any way that's positive.
Yeah. And I think that, and it all just comes down to like, it's having that hard, honest conversation with yourself, you know, and like just being super fucking ruthless and knowing that like I've kind of got a little mantra in my head I think about now. It's like, fuck your feelings. And that was like before when I said like, do I want to go to Dubai? Do I want to leave everything that's here? No. That's my feelings. Fuck your feelings. Does it matter? You know, like realistically, if you've got somewhere you say you want to be, then you can't expect that you're going to be comfortable the whole time and that you're going to like it. Like, what the fuck? What world is that? Like, that's not like living, you know, in that reality. But it's like you don't have to care how you feel to do something, you know. And I think that
comes back to how strong that purpose is, or like goal you've got. You're like, I got to go through this shit, but I want that thing, and I reckon I can get it.
Yeah. So, but I think that it's that like being honest with your insecurities, and I see that in my partner as well, where we'll have like a conversation, and it's for 3 weeks we'll be having a completely different conversation than what we should be having. And it's because she's not wanting to be honest yet about exactly what she's feeling and thinking, because it's like comes from like a place of insecurity. I'm like not using this as an example of like, oh, she always does, like she's fucking useless. This is just a thing that people do. And I've done it before in the past myself, but it's like, I'm like, all right, it'll come. Like it'll come. Like there'll be a point when we'll have the conversation, and then we'll have the real conversation, because your insecurities, it's very hard when you do care about how people perceive you, and you want to come across as like strong to other people, and you want to come across as independent, and you know, you don't want people to like look at you as weak, or I think where like it ain't weak to speak is like such a great mentality to have. But yeah, so then we'll get to the point where like she'll be ready to have the honest combo, and then I get to say honestly what I think's happening, because she's like ready to hear it. And then it's like a crazy level of growth comes out of that, you know? So I think that, yeah, it's just like I think the key thing that everyone needs to do is just start with like honesty for yourself, the people around you, take genuine stock of where you're at, admit what you don't know.
Because you get that fight or flight feeling
an honest
conversation. We're like, I'm about to drop some shit, but it's how I feel. Yeah. And like, I can't, to a certain extent, you can't help that.
No.
So it's like, this is how I feel. You can agree with it or not. It's not going to change how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, and then like, how often do you do that though? And then they'll feel a similar way, and then you actually work through it and you're like, oh.
For sure. All the time.
That's right.
Like, and that's what I've got. I know, like I've said this before to my partner, and it's like, I got boys like my mate Shane, right? He's like my fucking insecurity buddy. You know, like I can text him.
I just love the name as well, Shane. It's just like a real blokey bloke name.
Yeah. And it's like
insecure.
It's like he's like my guy, where I can tell him all my insecurities, like exactly how I'm feeling about something, and like exactly what you said. He'll be like, "Man, I feel the exact same way. I feel like this. I feel like that." And yeah, when you can, like, that's the only way that you can kind of get past that point is by like admitting. It's like, what do they say in Alcoholics Anonymous? Like, you got to admit that you have a problem, you know, and then like, that's how you start like living and going forwards.
No, I agree 110%. I got 3 more questions I'm asking you because we're stretching it out, which is good. I like. This is probably the longest podcast I think I've done. I think before this it was like 2 hours or something. But
easy for me.
You've been training a lot. This is light work. This is the warm up. So I get asked these questions at the end of each one. But if you could go back, what's something that you would change moving forward? And that can be like pretty broad, whether it be in the podcast world or just like life in general.
I would be healthier earlier in terms of like my physical. I've always tried to look after myself physically, like going to the gym and blah, blah, blah. But I'm also just like did my sport for fitness, which I think is good too. But I think that if I had one thing that I could go back and do, even from when I was like young, would be to just like have a real active, healthy, like drink a lot of water, eat a lot of good food and get a lot of good sleep and work out away from my sport. Still do my sport, but work out.
Just be healthy for the sake of being healthy.
Yeah.
Not for the sake of being better at something.
Yeah. Because I think that's probably something where I've like slipped in the past. But then also don't regret anything because I feel super, super lucky to be where I am now. So I'd be worried the only caveat would be I would change that thing if I knew it wouldn't change anything else but that thing. Like I like exactly where my life.
In saying that, like what happens if it made right now way better? Like
then I'd just be being greedy.
But but I guess that comes back to as well. This is like, what's enough for you then? Like you said, that's being greedy. So you feel like right now you're content with where you are.
Oh yeah. I can't want anything more than I got now.
Yeah.
I definitely would like to have a feeling, this is business wise, what I'm chasing is a feeling of like I could do the podcast for 2 years for free and I'd own a house and I want to own a house. I want to own a farm where I can go and like build my own sort of shit like every moto dude has dreamed about or mountain bike dude has dreamed about their entire life. Like I want that. I want my cars to be paid for. I just would find, if I could take the financial pressures out of my life completely, that would be great. But I don't want any more. I don't want the podcast to have more downloads. I don't need to be bigger. I don't want bigger guests. I don't need any of that. Like like wherever the direction is I'm sailing now, if I can just keep doing that, I'm happy. But if I could fully take the financial stress off and then that again would come back to like having to feel like you got to do a certain amount of podcasts in a certain way before you can experiment by doing the Katie's and the, that. Yeah. So if I could just have that financial pressure, that would be something I could have more of. But in terms of
do you reckon that would create more like this whole idea is like the financial pressures would go, but then something else would come up as like because there's always there's that whole idea of like we always want more.
Yeah.
So if you like more money, it's like more money, more problems kind of scenario where it's like you get.
I feel like I'm like fairly committed to a plan in my head.
And if you get to that, you feel like you're.
Yeah, like I don't want a fucking yacht. I don't want, you know what I mean? I don't want to have those crazy things. Like,
but do you reckon someone that has a yacht now probably just wanted a house? Like that's the weird, like the progression of like
but I think
setting.
that
it's just,
but I think that the people that make that kind of money though, I feel like to make that kind of money, unless you're super fucking lucky, people that make that kind of money have money making as their goal. And then it's like, all right, so what are you going to, now that you've had to work so hard to make this money, like the only enjoyment you can get is kind of from like spending that money because it's not like along the way you've had this crazy level of balance that's let you have this certain life. And that was something like Dubai, being there, I'd just go to the mall a bunch for like rent, because you don't have anything. So I'll be like, oh, fuck, I need that. Figure out, oh, the house needs this. Oh, I need this. So I was constantly going to the fucking mall. And in my day-to-day life, I don't do that. I don't do any shopping. I don't do any of that. And I just would see people like buying shit. And like, I just couldn't like bring myself to like buy something. There was like a bunch of stuff that I wanted to buy, but I just couldn't like, I don't know. I think it's probably the way we grew up a little bit. But I'm like still just scared if I spend money, the house of cards will just fucking crumble from under me. But yeah, I just don't think I've got that. Like I've already, even to have sick dirt bikes like I got and a truck to go to the, like
There's a bit of imposter syndrome still there.
I feel like that's probably gone away on like my day-to-day level. But I think that like I had a call this week for a project that like it actually probably won't happen. Like it was a call with it was like a big, like it could have been a big thing, but I actually, after the call, I don't think it'll happen. But on that call, I was like, oh, do you really think I'm the guy for this? Like, do you really think that I could stand next to this guy and like actually hold my own? So I think, but that's like a very well-known, very established person. So I think imposter syndrome probably in that sense of like, you sure you think that I'd be like, seems like there's a bit of a gap there.
Instead of just being like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because then, and I'd almost feel weird. I said, yeah, like let's 100% do it if you want to do it. But I would feel weird if I could stand next to that person that's achieved so much in their life and then be like, oh, I'm as good as that cunt.
Yeah, but I don't think you don't have to. I guess that's just that story that you're getting told.
Yeah, it's a story. Yeah.
Or it could just be like, look at that. Because I always try and it's funny when you meet someone famous, but you don't know they're famous.
Yeah.
And you realize it's just another person.
Oh, yeah.
So if you had no backstory on this person, you'd be like, why couldn't I talk to him or do whatever the project would be?
Yeah. No, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think everyone puts their shoes on the same fucking way. Shoes go on feet.
All right, second last one. What are you scared of?
I'm scared of losing all my followers and
messing up a thumbnail.
Scared of my Google account getting hacked. Nah. I think
Jesus had a similar thing.
Yeah. Just like, I don't know, just fucking up what I've done. Like that's something I get worried about, but I don't, it's not like an active worry, you know, like I think some of the, I would be bummed if I did something that fucked up what I've been working on so hard forever, you know, that'd like bum me out. Cause I've definitely had a couple moments in my life that have just been like fucking implosions.
Don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I'm just like literally, I mean, the whole America thing was like that. Like it was like,
yeah, like
it was just a rocket that flew to the sky and then fucking exploded. And then I ended up.
You had no power, no water, no nothing. Just like, this is over. Like,
well, when it was more so when like the last time I went there and then I got turned back basically. And I was just like, I had literally nothing. And I was like, ooh, like I fucked up. Like I fucked my life up right now. And then
how long did you sit in that for before you like?
Dude, a day. Like this is actually there's probably trauma from it. Yeah. There's like lasted quite a while. But pretty much like while I was in the fucking cell kind of deal, I got over it. Yeah. Because I was just like, fuck it. You know, and that's kind of like the good thing about burning the boats in a sense. Like when there is no plan B, like it's like scary and it's daunting, but like there's no place to go but up. So I think that's some
fighting mentality where it's like, I either do this or I get eaten alive.
You literally just fucking, sink or swim. Yeah. You know? So, but so I think I'm definitely scared now of just something like that happening. And then I also know that I'm kind of like a wild person in a sense. Like I have the potential to do something. I feel like I've gotten a lot better with age of like understanding the consequences of my actions. Yeah. But in the past, I've just been so fucking reckless with certain things. It's why I've like lived a cool life in a sense. But I think that in the past I've definitely had the potential to like fuck up everything. So it's like, that scares me. Yeah. So, but now I think that I've got enough. I feel like I've got enough of my shit together.
Brains is holding you together.
That stuff does, you know, like having a wage hanging over your head and like people that are, you know, responsibility. Yeah. When you're not responsible to people and like, you can sort of just do whatever the fuck you want. It's like almost not a good thing.
Yeah, when I put on a guy to work for me to like produce more videos and stuff, like massive pressure that I didn't realize. It's like, what can I get you to do? You're managing someone else and trying to like do your own job. Yeah. And honestly as well, when I got a sponsor for the podcast, that messed with the podcast for me anyway, because then I felt pressure to produce them. Yeah. Which like right now I don't have a sponsor and I kind of want to grow it a bit more. Like, you know, have you seen the Social Network when they're like Facebook's first started? Yeah. And they're like, all these people offering them money to like sponsor it. And they're like, but it's like, we don't know what it is yet kind of thing. Even though we know it's a podcast. I'm like, I kind of want to make it cool and like have it like that. And then get it to a point where like, okay, I'm happy with this. And it's to a point now where it can kind of like, obviously I'm going to get someone to help produce it now as well. I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this product and then try and sell that as a product instead of trying to sell it when you're like, I don't even know what this is yet.
Yeah, and you'll probably just find that you'll have people come along the way that listen and reach out, or, you know, like sponsors that see value. So that's always been the key thing for me that I've like, it was a real commitment, like a personal commitment to make at the start of it as well. I never wanted to do things for views. I never wanted to do things for money. I was like, well, I'm already broke, so like, fuck it, to a sense as well though. But it's like, because I just feel like if you focus on the product and only the product, then good shit happens as a result. And if you think about it in racer terms, if you focus so much on winning that you win, you get sponsors. Simple. Like, it's really not that hard of an equation. And I thought about that with the podcast, where I was like, if I just make the best podcast that people want to listen to, then it will make money. Like, the best podcasts in the world make money. I didn't exactly have to figure out how to make it make money. I mean, there's times
I guess
where
you focus on just making good product.
Yeah. Because, and then you can't help but, you know, we've had Boost for fucking 3 years. Like, I don't have to, like, I went to them, made one phone call. Yep. And then they've got stuff out of it the entire time. Manscaped, they came to me. They pitched me on the price. I just said yes. And then they've sold enough product to keep going. You know, so it's like, and it's just literally having a good podcast. Like, so many people, this can be applied to everything in life, is like, just do the thing the best that you can in the moment, and then the good things will then flow from that. Like, you can't put all of your effort into being a race winning rider and follow all the processes that need to be followed to make that happen, and not reach success if you're like good enough to sort of do it, you know? So yeah, that's like just the one thing that I've always tried to do. And I've said no to heaps of shit that is like, if it would impact the product, I just said no to it. And then it's like being driven by, again, it's like that why. It's like, if that thing's right at the very bottom, then you'll just sort of sing along.
That's a good point to live in, when you're just actually doing it for the sake of enjoyment and because it's the right thing. Yeah. And then I guess it's like it comes with the territory, is like, okay, I'm a good person. I'm doing this really well. People are coming out, because it's so funny when kids always ask me like, how do I get sponsored? And I'm like, do the things that you know you need to do, like eat healthy, be around your friends. Like, don't focus on getting sponsored, because that, like, honestly, like, once you're sponsored, it like it kind of taints the waters a bit.
For sure, man.
Like, when money gets in the way of a passion, like, you're never going to enjoy riding as much as you did when you're coming up. Yeah. When you're on the come up, man, and you're with your buddies and you're racing and you're enjoying it, focus on that. That's what will make you a better person, and in turn make you better for people to want to sponsor.
Oh, definitely.
But don't focus on, like, you're literally saying, how do I get free shit? Yeah. How do I get free shit? I'm like,
I always think about this. I used to say this to like mates when they would talk about like trying to get chicks, or they like struggling, they couldn't get girls. I'm like, be a track you'd want to ride. Yeah. That's as simple as fucking life is. Like, if you know, like, I know what a good motocross track is. Like, what's the variables that makes a fucking track fun to ride? And then it's like, it's almost the same for being a person. Like, what makes a good person? Well, then it's like, all right, if like in a dating context, like, you want a chick to ride you. So it's like, be a fucking track that you'd want to ride. Be a human. Work on
yourself. Yeah.
And it's like, it's so much fucking simpler than what.
Instead of trying to change something in someone else, changing yourself.
Yeah. Dude, it's like a super easy formula.
Because I used to, when I was younger, I think the whole idea of like getting with a girl was like, that was the final result. Like, that was the win. It's like, we hooked up. And then I changed that mentality where I was like, I really want to make a friend out of this and just enjoy your company as a person. And if it does go further, sweet. If it doesn't, got a new friend, this is awesome. And you focus your energy on that. And it's just so much of a nicer process, because it's like, you just feel like you've won throughout the whole process. And then if it goes further, sweet. If it doesn't, sweet. Yeah. It's still good. Yeah. And then being open and honest about that, it's just like, oh my God, this is like the simplest shit ever. And you feel good the whole process. Instead of being like, like why can't I get girls? Why can't this work?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
are you being the person that you would be attracted to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's fucking, I feel like it's super simple math.
Yeah.
But again, comes back to honesty. You've got to be like honest about who you actually are in the moment. Like, are you a track that you would want to ride?
And what you want as well.
Are you dusty? Are you dry? Are you hard pack? Have you got square edges?
Yeah.
Like, are you fucking jump shit?
Yeah.
Be honest and then fucking start prepping the track.
Good way to put it.
Yeah, it's fucking easy.
All right, last question. How do you want to be remembered?
But actually, for some reason, I just like the concept of leadership. I like to, if I could be looked at as a person where you're like, oh, he was a leader. Like whenever he did something, he was down to like put his hand up and like be one of the people that was like marching forward, Try and do that in my personal life with my friends. I try and do it with like the gym and training. When I'm in the room, I always try and like be in the room and like affect the room in a positive kind of way. With the podcast, I try and be a leader to Alex and Rones and try and like, encourage them to do their best work and, live a good life as well. Try and, I guess, be a leader in the sense of like the whole Gypsy Gang thing of, like I see that as a group. I see that as like a real group of people that is like actually shares some values and we all feel the same way about certain things and we all we align. We're like walking together in a sense. I don't know whether that's how other people feel, but
and people kind of relying on you as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I try not to think about that as much. Like and I don't know if people like do or don't. But regardless, it doesn't change the way how I act.
But I guess just relying you on, it was like being that like role model as like a leader to be like, okay, what you're doing is like something I can follow and actually get something from.
Yeah. And I'm down that. And I think, I guess that's what I mean. Yeah. Like I'm down to like be that guy and whether people do or not, I'm not trying to actively think about it too much, but I'd be like, all right, there's all these people that listen and I'd like to be able to be some kind of like good, like a force for it being good and relationships and, but then like being a good leader is also being a good follower. So then that sort of, you've got to work on like that side as well. So yeah, I think that being a leader would be like a way that I'd like to be remembered. And I feel like as far as the actual like podcast goes, I would like to be remembered as somebody that gave our world, like all the stuff we do, what we talk about, the writers, the athletes, the fucking artists, like the people that are in our section of the world, like motorsports, action sports, extreme. I would like to be in some part responsible for like raising that profile and like making it a better place than when I like first got into it and, having some kind of like tangible contribution to the athletes and the sports in general being looked at in a better kind of way or being like left in a better place. That would be like pretty dope.
And I definitely think you do that. Like even just from my personal experience, like when we first met and like appreciating the platform that gave me to share that story and then the obviously like flow-on effect of how many people that in turn helped. But then that like expanded to so many different podcasts you would have done that in some way would have helped someone come out of some negative spot and elevate them to a better spot. I'm like, that's like true value and I guess fulfillment in that person or in yourself. Because that made me look at the reaction I got from that podcast definitely changed the way I viewed my own fulfillment and where I truly got it from. Like when because I was obviously in that time I was already on a high.
Yeah.
And then that elevated and I was like, oh fuck, like this is a new level of happiness and it's directly come from helping others overcome something negative in their life. And that was like, oh my God, this is where like, this is the gold mine here. This is where you get all like, this is the real positive fulfillment. And that kind of is, I guess, altered my view of what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like even with my racing now, it's like, I want to race to grow, I guess, the podcast and my microphone and my
your own platform
to then share more of those ideas to help people. So now it's like my driving force is trying to help other people, even though racing's kind of the goal, but it's the goal because of this. Like the
Yeah,
why in my racing is now to just make my like platform bigger to then help people get through stuff that they might be struggling with.
Yeah.
So it's less, I guess, and I think it's more motivating when you're doing it for someone else, because it's like when you're doing it for yourself, you're like, yeah, it's like it feels good. But as soon as you can do it and then turn it back to someone else, it's like, oh my God, this is like proper.
Well, dude, I would actually, that's probably like a thing worth mentioning, and it sort of come back to what you asked before about like, what would you want extra or whatever? Like, I feel like I've actually, and I probably don't say this enough, I feel like I've already been given so much more back from the podcast than I could ever like actually even accept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it got to a point where I got so much fulfillment and like positivity and happiness from doing the fucking podcast, as like silly as that might sound, to where like it's actually too much, and now it's so easy to give people things. And that's probably, that happened like a while ago too. So it feels like for the last 2 years, maybe, probably like the last 2 and a bit years, just everything that I can, and I'm now in positions where like I can make one phone call and get something that like nobody else could even get their hands on, you know, and then I can and I've never even had one of these for myself. And then I can just give it to another person, you know, like I've got this ability where I could like get this thing from a company or whatever that, you know, like I would have always wanted to have. And I'm literally at the point where like, I just want to get it for somebody else. I don't even want it for me. Like I'm fucking fully dialed. And I think that, you know, now to be able to like live, to be able to like live from that kind of place where, you almost like don't want anything for yourself. Like it's just, it's like it's fully its own process now. And I'm just doing it for its own, like I don't want anything more out of it. Like, I want the financial stuff to be fully dialed in, but then all that's going to do is just make it more fun again.
Yeah.
Like, and when you said before about when you get sponsors, it like takes the fun out of it. That's fucking that's the podcast. Like the thing that makes the podcast not fun is that I like have to make a certain amount of money to still do the thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, but as soon as that's done, like I think that's the ultimate level for me, where I can then go, I've got a studio in like multiple places in the world. I can be wherever I want to be. I can talk to whoever I want to talk to. And then just by doing that, it's going to give other people more fulfillment than it gives me. Like that's a fucking insanely good life to live. And that is like more than I could actually even quantify in terms of like being grateful for that thing, you know? So it's
pretty overwhelming. Hey, like the amount, like the reach you can actually get. And the other thing is it's like, it's never ending. Like that's the thing, like you can put out a positive thing and it's just like you're planting a tree that's always growing.
Yeah.
So it's like not only like you can literally like right now, like your words somewhere in the world could be really impacting someone in like a positive way.
Yeah.
And that's constant.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy, this is actually Jacko when I was like fully living in like the cave days. Jacko would come into my room and he'd be like, oh, what are you looking at? I'm like literally like poring over analytics. That's when he was like stats, you know? And I'd be like poring over analytics just to purely for like, how do I make this better? Like, how do I do a better job at this? And Jackson's like, what's this stat mean? I'm like, oh, this is how many of this. This is how many of this. And he's like, oh, what's this mean? And I go, oh, that's how many people are listening every single hour on like audio platforms. And he's like, fuck, how many is there? I was like, I don't know, like 3,500 people every hour, or I don't know, like I think it's like 20,000 in an hour when like you drop a show. And he was like, bro, you realize that means that for every single hour of the day, people are listening to your podcast. That's one of the times where I was like, fuck, that's actually gnarly. Like when you get to, and it's actually not even hard to get to that level of that there's 24 hours in a day. If it's a 3-hour podcast, you know, like if you do the math, like you don't need that many people listening for that stat to actually be.
So you think that your voice is constantly going right now all around
literally
the world?
all around the world, just constantly. Yeah. And it'd be the same on YouTube. Like for every single second.
Weird reality.
For every single second of every single hour of every single day for probably the last 4 years, my voice has been playing on some speaker somewhere in the world.
Forever.
Indefinitely. And it probably will now. Like if I don't post on YouTube, like that fact will probably still remain for like a few years after that. Like it's fucking absurd, bro. It's like 70.
Have you ever caught anyone, like have you ever been somewhere and heard someone listening to your voice, like your podcast? Was that would fuck with me.
I've seen a dude like on a plane, like sitting down watching the show on YouTube, and like I've gotten people's cars and they had the podcast on.
Does it feel weird, even though it's like,
oh yeah, but it's like how it should. That's what should happen, I guess, if you do a good job.
Because I know obviously people listen to my podcast, but even when anyone comes up to me, like, I'll be listening to the podcast. It's almost like, oh shit, people listen to it. Like it's
yeah. But you just get it. Like there's just a certain period of time where like you got that used to it, you know. But like the first time someone would see me in an airport, you'd be like, holy fuck, this is just like a random place. This isn't got anything to do with a motocross track, or because it just slowly you get recognized at the track, and then you're like, oh, that's fucking cool. But then you're like, well, I do a show that interviews famous motocross people. Like there would be a person at a motocross, you know.
Yeah, checks out.
But then you go to a race, and then you're like, well, there's more of these people there. But when you go to like a car park or like a fucking, you know, Perth was actually gnarly. Like when I stayed in Perth, me and Blake would get up and go for a walk along the beach pretty much every morning, literally every morning, multiple people, like just standing getting coffee. Like it was, and I don't fucking go to Perth. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not like, it's not like I'm in Perth all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it definitely, then that happens, and then you're like, well, that's fucking weird. But then you can pretty much just expect now that for whatever reason, airports, it's just obviously there's so many people like from whatever coming in and out. But after a while, I think you just
it's a pretty good feeling though. Like I think this is when you go back to like being rich in people, not in money. Like you could be able to go to most countries in the world and be like, hey, I need a bed, or hey, I need something. And then they're like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that is like such a luxury that I never want to take for granted.
Nah,
I was like, I guess growing up small town, I was like, you have your friend group here and maybe Melbourne, like around Australia here and there. But like, I go to Scotland, I go to America, I go to anywhere and just be like, hey man, I'm here. Can we hang out? And like, that's not a normal thing by any means.
Well, dude, so when I was in Dubai, I was on Instagram. I saw a guy that I met when I lived in Bali at the start of the year, and he'd just moved to fucking Dubai. Yeah. And he was staying like 5 minutes from me. So I'm like, message him at 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, are you in Dubai right now? He's like, yeah. I was like, dude, me too. I just fucking moved here. And he's like, what? I said, yeah, let's have breakfast tomorrow morning. Whereabouts are you? And then we shared our locations, and we were like literally 3 kilometers away. I was like, fuck. That's like that's what happens, I think, when you commit to, like you said, you meet people all over the world. Like that's just the sort of shit that can.
And they're doing the same stuff that
they're doing the same. Yeah, you're meeting the people that are doing the same thing. But yeah, I feel that's one thing I feel super lucky. Like I could stay in a lot of different places all over the world. But that's where the Gypsy name come from. Like that's what people would, they'd say, oh, you just got fucking gypsy this week. Cause I just literally rock up and be like, wait, I'm in town for a week. I'm either sleeping in my van or on your couch. So fucking please let me sleep on your couch and use your Wi-Fi. And I just do that literally all over the world for like fucking 10 years.
Did you think with the monk thing then, when you became like the whole in the cave thing, do you almost feel like you're like, I need to, because I'm the similar where I'm like, I've always traveled, I've always moved, I've always enjoyed it.
For sure.
And I've kind of gotten here and I'm like, I want a base, I want to work on me, I want to focus on me. And so I was like, all right, we're ready for this, like ready for like nest here and just like get to know it and just not be the thing I guess you attach your identity to so much.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the period where, for me at least, like those, it was like pretty much 2 years, dude. Like no sex, no going out, no like
400 meters from
the fucking pavilion.
Yeah.
And like before that, before I went on that like lockdown of my own, I would literally like go out meet a girl out, and then go home at 10 and say, this is my address. The door's unlocked. If you want to stay at mine tonight, you can.
Yeah.
And then like every single weekend you'd have chicks from Pink Monkey just fucking.
Oh man.
Like it was insane. And I literally was like, stop. Yeah. All of it. We're cutting this shit off. But yeah, and I went from living like that lifestyle, and I'd fly around to at the drop of a hat. Like if something was on, if something was going on, all right, cool. I can just I'll figure out a way to make some content around it, or I'll go there. Like I want that experience. And it's like, it's fucking amazing. And there's so much stuff that I learned and so much experience that I gained as a person by living like that gypsy lifestyle. Like that's what, like I earned that fucking name. Like anyone that really knows me and has known me since I was like 17, the word gypsy to them is not a name. That's like, it's literally just fucking who I am. And then I just canned it. Like I just fucking stopped, And I think that there was the podcast required it almost. It's like you can only grow to the level of your incompetence. So I was like incompetent to the point where like, okay, this podcast can only do this much. So I was just like, right, shutting it down. Everything's fucking gone. And that's where it's like, of all the things that I lacked in my personal life as a human, when I was living that lifestyle, I learned those things by living the antithesis of it. So it's like, that's how I kind of got the balance in a sense. And I feel like that's where, not like I completed this is final gypsy, but it's like, that's where I was like, oh, I know who I am now.
Yeah.
Like I think, and I was probably like, yeah, between 30, that 30, 31, 32, like that's where I was really figuring it out, to where I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm an adult. I feel like I know who I am. I feel like I could be on this path now for the next 20 years. I'd be very surprised. I mean, never say never, but I'd be very surprised if there was any like earth-shattering revelations that came up. And, I feel like locking yourself in that room and like really sitting in that, just being with yourself and being uncomfortable. I think that's when I learned all the things that I never did before. And I kind of think that's what let me have a bit more success, if that makes sense.
Because you're almost distracting yourself with all that other shit. It's
just fuck yeah.
It's like, I don't have to deal with these issues. I can just go do this, and my mind's occupied, but it's not actually like,
and you think that like, if you take stock of it, you're like, oh, I'm fucking banging hot chicks and I'm fucking doing
from
this.
The outside, yeah, but you're getting fulfilled from that, and like where are you at in your life where it's like where's the positive here?
Yeah, and then at some point too, I watched this fucking crazy doco. No, it's like a little internet documentary. I've spoke about it before on the podcast, but it was this guy and he was in his 90s. He was just talking about death, and he had a nanny or a nurse, like pretty much full-time carer. Fuck, it just railed me, bro.
How, in what sense?
That's what we're all going to end up like.
Yeah, we're all going to die. We don't win this game.
But not just like, I feel like I've always, the not going to die thing is something that I think I've always been really good at using as a tool to like live my life to the fullest. Like never waste days, always be down for an adventure, like always love taking big risks because I know I'm going to fucking die.
Yeah, one day it's all over.
But there's a point 20 years before you die where you can't do fucking anything for yourself, and you're probably going to need a nurse. That's when you need like a really great wife. So it's like you talk about, of all the things that, I'm single and I'm banging chicks and I'm fucking, like there's pleasure in that. Why would you do anything differently if this is what feels so good in the moment? Then it was almost like seeing that end game, like seeing the last like years of this dude's life. I was like, dude, you can't get through that just based on living in the moment. And like, that's something you would actually like really need to plan for. That's the reason why you'd give birth and raise great kids, so that you'd have kids that would be able to help you when you're that old. And that's the reason why you should have a fucking great wife that wants to be around you for 60 years of your life. It's sort of just framed a few things like kind of differently. I was like, oh, maybe that's why people settle down. Maybe that's because like the last 20 years of your life are just like intensely brutal, where you're just like losing your basic capacities to function as a human.
I guess that comes back to it's like you're planning a future, like you're so worried about your future that you kind of do alter. Because I think it's just understanding yourself enough now to be you're like, yeah, do I have pleasure now and then maybe sacrifice it later? But again, it just comes back to knowing yourself and being like mindful of like where I'm at. But I do see what you mean. Like it would be so sad to just be this old, lonely.
In a nursing home, cheap as fuck, shitty people coming in and out looking at.
Yeah. Bro,
that's a reality to a lot of people. And I hadn't really given it the respect it deserved. So I mean, I'm trying to fucking.
That's what I'm scared of, honestly, being in a nursing home forgotten about.
It's a fucking reality, bro. The stats on that.
That's what I mean. I was like, I want to.
They keep that number quiet for a reason.
But I want to create a lifestyle where like people want to come see me. Like
exactly.
Yeah. Like like that's the whole thing. It's just like you should focus on just being wanted by people, and you become wanted by like carrying yourself a certain way and like emanating this energy and just being a good, positive person. People want a piece of that. So if you've been out for your whole life, people are going to want to see you. Like I love when people are like excited to see you and come up to you, and I'm like, that's like, again, it comes back to luck, but like I've created that, like being the person I am. Yeah. And that's like a conscious decision to do that every day. So
No, I completely agree, brother.
All right, I'll let you go because we've
done?
We've chatted for a long time.
That's good. I really enjoy it. I've been really looking forward to doing this with you, mate.
Cheers.
You're one person where I definitely feel like I could tell whatever stuff I haven't spoke about before. I'm like down to talk about it.
Yeah. It was good because when the one I did with Cooper Chapman the other day, he got up, and when he got up, he's like, "Oh, I've never done something like that before." And like he does podcasts all the time, but he's like, "I was just chatting to a mate."
Yeah.
And I've met him once before. And I was like, I like that I can. It was easy as well because we're honestly pretty much the same person. Just he surfed, I rode downhill.
Yeah.
Everything else is on like the same alignment. So that was like, and again, he's 3 steps ahead of where I am. So I'm generally interested. So I'm like, I love talking to someone where I'm like, you're just doing what I want to do.
It's easy.
It's like, I'm asking these questions because I want to know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if people want to listen, sweet. But if they don't, it doesn't matter because I'm learning from this. So easy. But no, appreciate it, mate.
Good, bro. Love you, doggy. Oh, and shout out to your epic gift as well. That was a hit yesterday. People loved it.
I saw that. Thanks to Isabel Healy. Isabel Healy Design. She put it together. She was like made things happen. But yeah, dude, I was like when it's like, I said like when the shoe fits, I was like, you got a bit of a Jesus look going. You spread the good word, the holy word. It was funny. I saw in the comments because I sent her a heap of heads. And I was like, make this work the best you can. Sam Hill was in the photos I sent. So was Ben Townley. Yeah. And so was Toby Price.
Yeah.
And I saw those were like, they got stiffed. And I was like, they got sent, but these ones fitted
it better. Actually, you know what's funny though? It actually did make me feel, again, like super grateful. I was like, fuck, it's pretty sick. Like that's a lot of really cool people. And then even the people that weren't on there.
Yeah.
Like the people that weren't on there are arguably cooler than the people that fucking were. So I was like, this is pretty wild.
Imagine that photo, but then I think how your 170 guests. Imagine having them spread out, like get a huge poster.
It could be more than that, man. We did episode 328 the other day.
So many people.
It's gnarly, But then that's without all the Supercross companions and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah. Anyway, let's get lunch. Where should we go?
I don't know. Somewhere good.